Barry Allen's eyes flew open in the darkness. His chest rose and fell sharply, his heart hammering like it was trying to break free. Cold sweat clung to his shirt, and for a few seconds, he could only stare at the ceiling above him. It looked unfamiliar. Then it clicked. His apartment. Right. His new apartment. He had moved in 3 weeks ago after scraping together enough money from his CSI salary to finally afford a place of his own. But even that memory felt wrong. No, not wrong. Incomplete. A flood of memories slammed into his mind all at once. 2 lives. 2 histories. 2 different versions of reality, both trying to fit inside one head. One life belonged to Barry Allen, 23 years old. Fresh out of college with a forensic science degree. 6 months into his first real job at the Central City Police Department. An orphan since the age of 8, after a rainy night car accident took both of his parents and left him as the only survivor. Raised by Detective Joe West and his daughter Iris, in a home that had always been kind, but never truly felt like his own. That was one life. The other life belonged to someone completely different. Someone from a world where Central City was nothing more than fiction. Where Barry Allen was a comic book hero, a TV character, a legend known as the Flash. A world where his origin, his enemies, his victories, his failures, and even his fate had already been written across countless comics, shows, and timelines. That person had been a DC fan. A complete Flash fanboy who had spent years reading, watching, and memorizing everything about the speedster. And now that person was Barry. Or Barry had become him. At this point, the difference no longer mattered. The 2 sets of memories slowly fused together, forming one complete, terrifying truth. Barry sat up and pressed both hands against his face. His apartment was small and barely furnished. A cheap couch, a second-hand table, a mattress lying directly on the floor. Nothing fancy, nothing comfortable. A junior CSI's salary did not go far in Central City, especially when he had been saving every dollar just to move out of Joe's house and finally live on his own. He had wanted independence. Now, right after finally getting it, his entire reality had changed. Barry reached for his phone lying beside the mattress. The screen lit up. 2:47 a.m. September 23rd. His fingers tightened around the phone. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, the Queen's Gambit would sink somewhere in the North China Sea. Billionaire playboy Oliver Queen would vanish and be declared dead. Queen Consolidated stock would collapse. Robert Queen's death would shake the business world. And 5 years later, Oliver Queen would return to Starling City as a very different man. A man with a hood, a bow, and a mission. Barry knew all of it because, in another life, he had watched it happen on a screen. His thoughts started moving faster. Too fast. Connections formed instantly. Details linked together like pieces of a puzzle solving themselves. Possibilities, dangers, and future events lined up in his mind with unnatural clarity. Barry froze. Was this because of the transmigration? Was this the result of 2 minds merging into one? He had always been smart. Even the original Barry Allen had been quick-thinking, observant, and sharp enough to excel in forensic science. But this was different. This felt enhanced. He stood up and began pacing around the small bedroom. The wooden floor creaked under his bare feet. Through the thin wall, he could hear a neighbor's television playing faintly. Such normal sounds. A normal night. In a city that was anything but normal. Then another realization struck him. This timeline was different. His parents had not been murdered by a time-traveling speedster. There was no reverse flash. No Harrison Wells secretly wearing another man's face. No grand conspiracy built around his childhood trauma. Just a car accident on a rainy night. Just tragedy. And Joe West, being the kind of man who refused to let a broken 8-year-old child disappear into the system. No paradox. No corrupted timeline. No hidden enemy behind it all. This world was clean. Natural. Barry stopped pacing and looked toward the dark window. His reflection stared back at him. 23 years old. Lean, untrained, and still carrying the softness of someone who had never pushed his body beyond its limits. Brown hair a little too messy. Green eyes wide with the weight of everything he now knew. He had knowledge. Years of it. He knew Oliver Queen's future. He knew about the particle accelerator Harrison Wells would eventually build at STAR Labs. He knew about metahumans, the rogues, future disasters, hidden identities, weaknesses, origins, and enemies that had not even appeared yet. He knew the future. And more importantly, he had time. The particle accelerator was still years away. STAR Labs was only a research facility for now, focused on theoretical physics. Harrison Wells was likely still giving lectures, gathering funding, or designing the foundation of what would one day change the world. The lightning strike that was supposed to create the Flash had not happened yet. Which meant one simple thing. Barry Allen was not the Flash. Not yet. Barry Allen wasn't the Flash yet. Right now, he was just another guy trying to survive. A low-level CSI with a cheap apartment, a thin paycheck, and a life that felt like it was going nowhere. That had to change. Barry opened the calculator app on his phone, but stopped before typing anything. He didn't need it. The numbers organized themselves in his mind with frightening clarity. His savings, $3,847. His monthly salary after taxes, $2,100. His expenses, $1,650. That left him with only $450 a month to save or invest. At that pace, building real wealth would take him forever. Unacceptable. Queen Consolidated was currently trading at $47 per share. Once the Queen's Gambit went down and Robert Queen's death was confirmed, the stock would crash. Panic alone would probably drag it to around $12 per share. Oliver Queen's presumed death would push it even lower over the following weeks, maybe down to $8. After that, the company would slowly recover over the next 5 years under new leadership. Not fully, but enough. And when Oliver Queen returned from the dead, the stock would explode. If Barry shorted the stock now, covered his position near the bottom, then reinvested everything during the recovery period, he could turn a few $1,000s into something much bigger, maybe even millions. But for that, he needed capital. More than $3,847. Barry opened his banking app and checked everything. Savings account, $3,847. Checking account, $892. He also had a small investment account Joe had helped him set up after college. Current value, $2,200 in basic index funds. Then there was his car. A 10-year-old sedan he had bought used for $4,500 2 years ago. If he sold it fast, he might get around $3,000. There were also a few old savings bonds from his childhood that Joe kept in a safe. Maybe another $800. If he liquidated everything, he could scrape together around $10,000. It wasn't much, but it was enough to begin. His enhanced mind ran the numbers instantly. A $10,000 short position on Queen Consolidated, timed correctly and covered at the bottom, could become $30,000. Then, if he reinvested that money into the same stock during the recovery and held it until Oliver returned, that amount could grow to $200,000 or more. $200,000. That was real money. Enough to start building toward his real goals. His phone buzzed. A message from Iris West. Can't sleep either? Coffee tomorrow morning. Barry stared at the screen. Iris. Joe's daughter. The girl he had grown up with. The girl he had shared a home with. The girl Barry Allen had always carried complicated feelings for. In the original timeline, they would eventually end up together. Married. Partners in every way that mattered. But that Barry Allen had been different. That Barry had been a hero shaped by tragedy, destiny, and accident. A man who stumbled into his powers and learned how to become the Flash through pain, mistakes, and the guidance of people like Harrison Wells. This Barry Allen had no intention of stumbling through anything. He typed quickly. Work starts early tomorrow. Rain check. Her reply came almost immediately. You've been weird lately. Everything okay? Barry hesitated. Then he answered. Just adjusting to the new place. I'm fine. He set the phone down before she could send another message. He wasn't fine. Not even close. He was something else now. The life Barry Allen had been slowly building toward was gone. The simple life of a forensic scientist, maybe dating his foster sister, maybe working his way up through the CCPD ranks, no longer mattered. That path was over. Barry walked over to his laptop, an old machine that took far too long to start. While it booted up, he pulled out a notebook and began writing. Not the careful, organized evidence notes that belonged to Barry Allen's memories. This was different. Faster. Sharper. His hand moved across the page in a controlled frenzy as his enhanced mind divided everything into categories. Financial targets. Queen Consolidated. Other companies and stocks that would rise or collapse because of events he already knew were coming. Research targets. Clifford DeVoe. Currently a professor at Central City University. In the original timeline, DeVoe would eventually create the thinking cap, a device capable of enhancing human intelligence to terrifying levels. But that hadn't happened yet. Which meant somewhere in Central City, there was research data Barry could get his hands on before DeVoe finished his work. Barry continued planning. Geographic targets. Lianyu. The island in the North China Sea where Oliver Queen would spend most of his 5 years of hell. Where Slade Wilson was currently operating. Where there were resources, training opportunities, and secrets that could be exploited. Training facilities. Gyms. Dojos. Fighting circuits. Places where Barry could transform this weak, untrained body into something dangerous. The list grew. Pages filled with notes, connections, timelines. The particle accelerator wouldn't launch for at least 4 to 5 years based on what he remembered of the show's timeline and current technological development. That gave him time. Years to prepare. Years to build wealth, skills, knowledge. Years to ensure that when that lightning finally struck, it wouldn't hit some unprepared CSI stumbling through his origin story. It would hit someone ready to become something unprecedented. Barry looked at his reflection in the dark laptop screen before it fully loaded. His eyes looked different now. Harder. More focused. He was done being ordinary. First priority, money. Liquidate everything. Set up the short positions through shell companies to avoid attention. Let Queen Consolidated crash and ride it to the bottom. Then the real work would begin. Barry Allen was going to quit being a victim of circumstances and become something this universe had never seen before. The Central City Bank opened at 9 a.m. sharp on a Wednesday morning. Barry was already waiting outside, dressed in his work clothes but having called in sick to the CCPD for the first time in 6 months. The excuse was weak, something about a stomach bug, but he didn't care. What he needed to do today was more important than processing evidence in the crime lab. He walked inside the moment the doors unlocked, heading straight to a desk where a personal banker sat organizing her morning paperwork. She looked up with a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes at this early hour. Good morning.
Hey everyone, welcome to our channel. And thank you for your support. If there's a favorite novel on the channel and you want the next part, you're just one step away. Become a Patreon member and I can make it depending on your tier. Thank you for your attention.
How can I help you? Barry sat down, pulling out his phone with the banking app already open. I need to liquidate several accounts and transfer the funds to my checking account, savings, investment account, and some bonds. The banker's smile became slightly more interested. Of course. Do you have your account information? 20 minutes later, Barry walked out of the bank with $6,947 in his checking account. The savings were empty. The investment account was closed. The bonds from childhood were cashed in. All of it consolidated into liquid capital he could actually use. Next stop, his car. He drove the sedan to 3 different used car dealerships before finding one willing to give him a decent offer. $2,800 cash, paid immediately. The dealer seemed confused why someone would sell without having another vehicle lined up first, but Barry just took the money and called a cab. $9,747 total. Not quite $10,000, but close enough. The cab dropped him off at an internet cafe downtown. Barry paid for 2 hours of computer time and settled into a booth in the back corner where nobody would see his screen. His fingers flew across the keyboard with a speed and precision that surprised him. The enhanced intellect wasn't just making him think faster, it was improving his coordination, his ability to multitask, his memory retention. He opened multiple browser tabs, accessing offshore banking websites through VPN connections. Setting up shell companies wasn't difficult if you knew where to look. There were services that specialized in this kind of thing, operating in legal gray areas that asked few questions as long as you paid the fees. 2 hours and $500 in setup fees later, Barry had 3 shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands. Each one had its own bank account. Each one was technically legal, just buried under enough paperwork that casual investigation wouldn't immediately connect them to Barry Allen, CSI from Central City. He distributed his $9,247 across the 3 accounts, then began opening brokerage accounts linked to each shell company. His mind tracked passwords, account numbers, routing information without needing to write anything down. Everything stayed organized in his head with perfect clarity. By noon, he was ready. Barry pulled up Queen Consolidated stock information. Currently trading at $47.23 per share. The Queen's Gambit was scheduled to depart in 13 days according to the timeline he remembered. The news would break approximately 2 days after that when the wreckage was discovered. 15 days until the crash. He couldn't short the stock yet. Too early would raise questions. Too late would miss the optimal entry point. He needed to wait until the absolute last moment before the news broke, then execute everything at once. Barry closed the browser, cleared the cache, and left the internet cafe. His phone buzzed as he walked down the street. A text from Joe West. Barry's phone buzzed as he walked down the street. A text from Joe West. Heard you called in sick. You okay? Need anything? Barry stopped walking, staring at the message. For a moment, guilt twisted in his chest. Joe had been there for him when no one else was. Took in a traumatized 8-year-old and raised him like his own son. Never asked for anything in return. Never made Barry feel like a burden even when things got tight financially. The original Barry Allen loved Joe West like a father. And this Barry Allen, the merged version with memories from 2 lives, felt that love just as strongly. He typed back carefully, just a bug. Should be fine by tomorrow. Thanks for checking in. Another buzz came almost immediately. Iris said you've been acting strange. Want to talk? Barry's fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was delicate. Joe was a detective. He noticed patterns, changes in behavior, things that didn't add up. And Barry had been acting different since the transmigration. More focused. More driven. Less present in the small moments that used to define his relationship with the West family. He needed to handle this carefully. Pulling away completely would raise red flags. But he also couldn't afford to be the same person he'd been before. That Barry Allen was going nowhere. This version needed space to build what was coming. Nothing to talk about, he typed. Just adjusting to living alone. It's different, you know, good different. But still an adjustment. Joe's reply took a few minutes. Barry could almost picture him at his desk at CCPD, frowning at his phone, trying to decide if he believed that answer. Your old man used to do the same thing. Bottle stuff up. Pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. Don't be like him, Barry. We're family. You can talk to me. That one hit harder than Barry expected. Because Joe was right. Henry Allen, the man whose memories Barry carried, had been the type to internalize everything. Keep his struggles private. Try to handle everything alone until it all came crashing down. And in a way, Barry was doing exactly the same thing. But what choice did he have? Some secrets were too big to share. Some truths would only hurt the people he cared about. This was something he had to carry alone. I know, Joe, he typed back. I promise I'm okay. Just need some time to figure out the whole independent adult thing. I'll call you this weekend. Maybe come by for dinner. The response came quickly this time. You better. Iris is making lasagna. Barry smiled despite himself. Wouldn't miss it. He pocketed the phone, feeling the weight of that interaction settle on his shoulders. The lie sat heavy in his chest, but it was necessary. Some burdens you carried alone. Some secrets you took to the grave. This was one of them. Barry pulled up a ride-share app and requested a car. While he waited, he opened a new browser on his phone, searching for information on Central City University's campus security systems. The results weren't encouraging. CCU had upgraded to digital surveillance 3 years ago. High-definition cameras covered most buildings, including faculty offices. Badge access systems tracked entry and exit times. Security guards made regular rounds. Breaking into DeVoe's office wouldn't be simple, but more than that, it might be unnecessary. At least right now. Barry's enhanced mind worked through the problem methodically. DeVoe was a professor, an academic, which meant his research wasn't locked away in some secret vault. It was published, peer-reviewed, stored in university databases and academic journals. The thinking cap wouldn't exist yet, but the theoretical foundation for it would be scattered across DeVoe's published work. The cutting-edge stuff, the real breakthroughs that would lead to the thinking cap, those might be unpublished. But even that wouldn't be in his office. It would be in his lab. And more importantly, it would be on his computer. His personal devices. His cloud storage. Breaking into an office in the middle of the day was stupid. Breaking into a heavily monitored university building at night was risky. But hacking into DeVoe's email and cloud accounts from the safety of his apartment? That was smart. Barry cancelled the ride-share request and started walking toward the public library instead. He needed to research digital security, network penetration, social engineering. His enhanced intellect would help him learn fast, but he still needed the foundational knowledge. As he walked, another text came through. Iris this time. Seriously, coffee? You're being weird and I want to know why. Don't make me show up at your apartment. Barry laughed softly. That was so perfectly Iris. Pushy, caring, refusing to let him isolate himself even when he was trying to. And honestly, he missed her. The original Barry Allen's memories were full of moments with Iris. Growing up together. Late-night talks. Inside jokes. The complicated dance of feelings that neither of them had ever fully acknowledged. This Barry Allen had all those memories. All those feelings. But he also had the meta-knowledge that in the original timeline, their relationship had been complicated. Drama with Eddie. The whole we're siblings but not really thing. Her dating his enemy without knowing it. Years of will they won't they tension. But that was the TV show version. This timeline was different. No reverse flash. No time travel drama. Just two people who'd grown up together and maybe had feelings they'd never explored. Besides, one of the things he'd always wanted as a DC fan watching the show was to see Barry actually be smooth with the women in his life. Not the awkward, stumbling mess who took forever to make a move. Actually confident. Actually capable of handling romantic relationships like a functional adult. If he was going to live this life, he might as well do it right. Tomorrow morning before work, he typed back. Java Junction at 7:30. I've just been thinking about some things. Need to clear my head. Her response was immediate. Finally. I'll be there. And you better have a good explanation for ghosting me. I haven't been ghosting you. Just busy. Sure, Alan. See you tomorrow. He pocketed the phone with a slight smile. Tomorrow he'd reassure Iris that he was fine. Just going through some personal stuff. Growing pains from living independently. Nothing she needed to worry about. The Central City Public Library was a massive building downtown, 5 floors of books, computers, and quiet study spaces. Barry found an empty terminal in the back corner of the 3rd floor, away from the main traffic areas. He logged in with a guest pass and opened multiple browser tabs. Digital security. Network protocols. Encryption methods. Social engineering techniques. His enhanced mind absorbed the information at an incredible rate. Concepts that would normally take weeks to understand clicked into place in minutes. He wasn't just reading. He was comprehending, integrating, building a complete mental framework for how modern digital security worked and where its weaknesses were. 2 hours later, he had a plan. DeVoe would have a university email account. That email would be connected to other services. Cloud storage. Academic databases. Maybe personal accounts if he wasn't careful about separating work and personal devices. All of it protected by passwords and security questions that could be socially engineered if you knew the right information. Barry opened a new tab and searched for Clifford DeVoe's published work. Articles. Research papers. Conference presentations. His CV listed everything going back 15 years. Barry schemed through it all, looking for personal details. References to family. Hobbies. Interests outside of work. There. A paper from 3 years ago that mentioned DeVoe's wife in the acknowledgements section. Special thanks to my wife Merleise for her patience and support during this research. Merleise DeVoe. Barry searched for her name. Found her on social media within minutes. Public Facebook profile. Photos of her and Clifford at various events. Posts about their anniversary. Her birthday. Their dog. Information. Ammunition for social engineering. Barry kept digging. Found Clifford's own social media presence. Much more limited. Professional accounts mostly, but still useful. His birthday was listed. His undergraduate university. References to his hometown. Security questions were usually built around this kind of information. Mother's maiden name. First pet. High school mascot. All of it could be discovered with enough research. But Barry wasn't going to do this from a public library computer. Too risky. Too easy to trace. He needed to set up proper operational security first. VPN. Encrypted connections. Burner devices if possible. He closed all the browser tabs and cleared the cache, then logged out of the terminal. As he walked out of the library, his phone buzzed with a news alert. Queen Consolidated announces Queen's Gambit departure date, luxury yacht to set sail Friday. Barry checked the date. Friday was in 11 days. The timeline was tightening. He pulled up his notes app and created a new priority list. Asterisk immediate actions, next 11 days asterisk. 1. Set up secure digital infrastructure, VPN, encrypted email, burner laptop. 2. Social engineer access to DeVos University accounts. 3. Download all research data related to neural enhancement. 4. Execute Queen Consolidated short positions on day of departure. 5. Meet with Iris, maintain normal relationship, ease her concerns. 6. Begin physical training regimen, establish baseline fitness. Asterisk medium term, next 6 months asterisk. 1. Monitor Queen Consolidated crash and recovery. 2. Begin combat training at selected facilities. 3. Research LNU insertion methods. 4. Build financial capital through stock investments. 5. Improve physical conditioning to acceptable combat-ready levels. 6. Acquire necessary technical skills for chamber construction. Asterisk long term, next 3 to 5 years asterisk. 1. Achieve Batman-level combat proficiency. 2. Build corporate empire and secure funding for chamber project. 3. Complete DeVos research integration. 4. Prepare for LNU deployment. 5. Design and construct transformation chamber. 6. Position for particle accelerator explosion. Barry reviewed the list, his enhanced mind automatically calculating probabilities and timelines. Everything was achievable if he stayed focused. If he didn't get distracted. If he made smart decisions instead of impulsive ones. He headed back to his apartment, already mentally planning his conversation with Iris tomorrow. He'd keep it simple. Tell her he'd been thinking about his career. About whether CSI work was really what he wanted long-term. About feeling like he needed to do something bigger with his life. All true enough without revealing anything that mattered. When he got home, his body reminded him of the workout he'd attempted earlier. His muscles ached. His arms felt like jelly. He was pathetically out of shape. Barry changed into gym clothes and dropped to the floor for round 2. Push UPS first. He managed 12 before his arms gave out. Pathetic. In the comics, Barry Allen could vibrate through walls, think at super speed, and fight metahumans who could level buildings. This version couldn't even do 20 push UPS. But that would change. He forced himself through the routine. Push UPS in sets of 10 with rest breaks. Sit UPS until his ABS burned. Squats until his legs shook. Planks until his whole body trembled with effort. When he finally collapsed on the floor, gasping for air, his phone buzzed with another news notification. Queen's Gambit prepares for maiden voyage, Robert Queen to join son Oliver on historic journey. Barry stared at the headline through sweat-blurred vision. The game was in motion. The timeline was proceeding exactly as he remembered from the show. Oliver Queen would disappear. Queen Consolidated would crash. And Barry would be ready to profit from it. Phase 1 was about to begin. But first, he needed to get through coffee with Iris tomorrow without making her worry. He doesn't want anyone trying to investigate him at this time. Barry arrived at Java Junction 15 minutes early. The coffee shop sat on the corner of 5th and Market, a popular spot for Central City's morning crowd. Glass windows wrapped around 2 sides of the building, giving clear views of the street outside. Inside, the space was small but efficiently designed with a long counter on one side and scattered tables filling the rest of the floor. At 7:15 a.m., the place was already packed. Business people in suits ordered complicated drinks. College students camped out at tables with laptops. The espresso machine hissed constantly. Conversations overlapped into a low buzz of noise that filled the space. Barry got in line behind 3 other people. His enhanced mind automatically tracked everything. The barista was working fast but efficiently. Average wait time per order was 2 minutes and 30 seconds. At current pace, he'd reach the counter in 7.5 minutes. Iris would arrive in exactly 15 minutes if she was on time, which she usually was. He ordered a black coffee for himself and a vanilla latte for Iris. She'd been ordering the same drink since high school. Some things didn't change even when everything else did. Barry paid cash and moved to the pickup area. While waiting, he scanned the seating options. Most tables were full. There was a spot by the window in the back corner. 2 seats. Good lighting. Enough distance from other tables that conversation would stay private. He grabbed the drinks when they were ready and claimed the corner table. Then he waited, sipping his coffee slowly, watching the door. Iris walked in at exactly 7:30 a.m. She looked different from the last time he'd seen her 3 weeks ago. More professional somehow. She wore dark jeans and a burgundy sweater that brought out the warmth in her brown skin. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. No makeup that Barry could see, but she didn't need any. She spotted him immediately and walked over. Barry stood up, pushing the vanilla latte toward her as she sat down. "You remembered my order," Iris said, wrapping her hands around the cup. "Of course I did." Barry sat back down, meeting her eyes. "Thanks for coming. You made it sound important." Iris took a sip of her latte, watching him over the rim of the cup. "And you've been acting weird, so yeah, I was going to show up." Barry smiled slightly. That was so perfectly Iris. Direct. No dancing around the subject. She wanted answers and she wasn't going to pretend otherwise. "I know I've been distant lately," Barry started, keeping his voice calm and measured. "And I'm sorry about that. I've just been thinking about a lot of things. What kind of things? Iris set her cup down, giving him her full attention. Barry took a breath, organizing his thoughts. This conversation needed to go well. He needed to reassure Iris without revealing anything that mattered. The original Barry Allen would have stumbled through this, awkward and uncertain. But this version had enhanced emotional intelligence layered on top of years of memories from 2 different lives. About my job, he said. About whether being a CSI is really what I want to do with my life. Iris blinked. You love forensics. You've been talking about working in a crime lab since you were 15. I know. Barry nodded. And I'm good at it. But being good at something doesn't mean it's what you're supposed to do forever. I've been processing evidence for 6 months now, running tests, writing reports. It's fine work, important work, but I keep thinking there has to be more. Iris leaned back in her chair, studying him. More like what? I don't know yet. Barry spread his hands. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I just feel like I'm capable of doing something bigger, something that actually makes a difference instead of just cataloging evidence after crimes have already happened. There was a long pause. Iris took another sip of her latte, her expression thoughtful. The coffee shop noise filled the silence between them. Someone's phone rang. The espresso machine hissed. A baby cried somewhere near the front. You know what's funny? Iris finally said. I've been feeling the same way. Barry raised an eyebrow. Yeah, my journalism degree. Iris gestured with her cup. 4 years of school. Graduated with honors. And now I'm writing puff pieces about local businesses for a website that pays me barely enough to cover rent. My dad keeps asking when I'm going to get a real job and I don't know what to tell him. Joe means well, Barry offered. I know he does. Iris smiled, but there was frustration behind it. But he doesn't get it. He became a cop right out of high school and worked his way up. It was straightforward for him. For us it's different. We're supposed to figure out these career paths and know exactly where we're going and I just... She trailed off, shaking her head. Feel like you're supposed to be doing something more, Barry finished. Exactly. Iris met his eyes. So I get it. What you're feeling. I really do. Something shifted in the space between them. A moment of real connection. Understanding that went beyond words. This was the Iris that Barry remembered from the original Barry Allen's memories. The girl who got him. Who understood things without needing detailed explanations. Let me play this up a bit, Barry thought and acted immediately. I've missed this, Barry said quietly. Talking to you like this. And the effect. Iris's expression softened. I've missed it too. You've been so distant lately and I didn't know if I'd done something wrong or if you were pulling away because you didn't want to be around me and Joe anymore. It's not that at all. Barry reached across the table, covering her hand with his. You and Joe gave me a home when I had nothing. I'll never forget that. Never stop being grateful for it. This isn't about running away from you guys. It's about trying to figure out who I'm supposed to be. Iris turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. Her skin was warm from holding the coffee cup. Barry felt his heart rate increase slightly. Enhanced intellect didn't make human reactions go away. He was still attracted to her. Still felt the pull that had been there since they were teenagers, buried under years of calling each other brother and sister because that's what made sense when they shared a house. But they weren't sharing a house anymore. And the original Barry Allen's awkwardness was gone, replaced by confidence that came from knowing exactly what he wanted. So what are you going to do? Iris asked, not pulling her hand away. About your job. I'm thinking about leaving CCPD, Barry admitted. Maybe starting something on my own. I've been looking into some tech projects. Ideas for inventions. It's still early stages but I think I might have something. Iris's eyes widened slightly. Seriously? That's huge, Barry. Maybe. Or maybe it's stupid and I'll crash and burn. Barry smiled. But I'd rather try and fail than spend the next 10 years wondering what could have been. That's not stupid at all. Iris squeezed his hand. That's brave. I'm proud of you. The words hit harder than Barry expected. Proud. When was the last time someone had said that to him? Joe had been supportive but cautious. His co-workers at CCPD thought he was talented but unremarkable. Nobody in his life saw him as someone who could do extraordinary things. But Iris did. At least in this moment. And that mattered more than Barry wanted to admit. Okay, this going better than I expected. What about you? He asked. What are you going to do about the journalism thing? Iris sighed. I don't know. Keep writing I guess. Keep applying to better publications. Hope something breaks eventually. It will. Barry said it with certainty. You're too talented not to end up somewhere good. You're biased? Doesn't make it less true. They sat like that for a while, hands linked across the table, coffee cooling in their cups. The morning rush continued around them. People came and went. Conversations rose and fell. But in their corner, time felt slower. Suspended. Finally, Iris glanced at her phone. I need to get going. I have an interview at 9. For what? Freelance piece about the Queen's Gambit. Iris released his hand and gathered her bag. I'm trying to get local business owners to talk about the economic impact of losing Robert Queen if this journey goes wrong. It's actually a daring speculation. Barry nodded, keeping his expression neutral even as his mind catalogued that information. Iris was already investigating the Queens. That made sense given her journalism background and the massive news story. But it also meant she'd be digging into exactly the area where Barry had just made significant money. He needed to be careful. Good luck with the interview, Barry said, standing up with her. They walked to the door together. Outside, early morning sunlight cut through the glass windows, warm despite the season. Iris stopped on the sidewalk, turning to face him. Thanks for this, she said. For being honest with me. For not shutting me out. Always. Barry smiled. We should do this more often. Coffee and actual conversation. I'd like that. Iris stepped closer, rising on her toes to kiss his cheek. Her lips were soft and warm against his skin. When she pulled back, there was color in her face that hadn't been there before. Good luck with your tech projects. And Barry. Yeah, don't be a stranger, okay? I know you're figuring stuff out, but you don't have to do it alone. Barry watched her walk away, disappearing into the morning crowd on Market Street. He touched his cheek where she'd kissed him, feeling the lingering warmth. That had gone better than expected. Seeds planted. Connection re-established. And he'd managed to do it without the awkwardness that had defined the original Barry Allen's romantic life. Progress. Barry pulled out his phone and checked the time. 8:03 a.m. He needed to get to work. The crime lab expected him at 8:30 and he couldn't afford to be late while he was still employed there. He started walking towards CCPD headquarters, his mind already shifting to the next priority. Today was the day he'd start building his digital infrastructure. The tools he needed to access DeVos research and set up his financial operations properly. The coffee with Iris had been necessary, but it was also a delay. Phase 1 was in motion and Barry couldn't afford distractions. Even pleasant ones. The Central City Police Department Crime Lab occupied the third floor of the main headquarters building downtown. Barry arrived at 8:27 a.m., badging through security and taking the stairs up to avoid the slow elevators. The lab was already busy when he walked in. 3 other forensic technicians were at their stations, processing evidence from overnight cases. His supervisor, a woman named Dr. Patel, was in her office with the door closed. Perfect. Barry went to his workstation in the corner. It was small but functional. Microscope. Computer terminal. Drawers full of testing supplies and evidence bags. Everything he needed to do his job and nothing more. He logged into the computer terminal and pulled up his assigned cases. 2 burglaries from last week that needed fingerprint analysis. 1 assault case waiting on blood spatter interpretation. Standard work. Nothing urgent. Barry pulled out his personal phone, setting it on the desk beside his keyboard. Then he opened a browser window on the computer terminal and navigated to a search engine, typing in his first query, best VPN services for privacy. Results loaded. Barry scanned them quickly, his enhanced intellect processing information at incredible speed. He eliminated services based in countries with mandatory data retention laws, crossed off anything that didn't offer military-grade encryption, narrowed it down to 3 options that met his security requirements. Alan, you got a minute? Barry minimized the browser window instantly, looking up to see Marcus Chan, one of the other forensic technicians. Marcus was in his 40s, balding, generally friendly but not someone Barry had gotten particularly close to during his 6 months here. What's up? Barry asked, keeping his tone casual. Patel wants you to look at the Morrison case. Apparent suicide, but the family is contesting it. Need you to do a second analysis on the scene photos. Sure. Send them to my terminal. Already did. Marcus nodded and walked back to his own station. Barry reopened his browser window, memorizing the VPN information he'd found before closing it completely. Then he pulled up the Morrison case files and started reviewing the scene photos. The work was mechanical. His enhanced mind made the analysis trivial. Angle of the gunshot wound. Blood spatter pattern. Position of the body. Everything was consistent with suicide. The family wanted it to be something else because that was easier to accept, but the evidence didn't lie. Barry typed up his findings in 15 minutes. Work that would normally take an hour and a half. He submitted the report and went back to his phone. New search, encrypted email providers comparison. More results. More information to process and filter. Barry made notes in his phone's note app, creating a list of services and their security features. ProtonMail looked promising. Based in Switzerland. End-to-end encryption. No IP logging. Perfect for what he needed. He glanced around the lab. Everyone was focused on their own work. Dr. Patel's door was still closed. Nobody was paying attention to what he was doing. Barry opened a new search, where to buy laptop with cash, no questions. This one was trickier. Most stores required ID for purchases over a certain amount. Credit cards left paper trails. He needed somewhere that dealt in cash and didn't care who was buying. His enhanced mind connected dots rapidly. The electronics district near the docks. Sketchy area. Lots of small shops that sold refurbished equipment. The kind of places that catered to people who wanted untraceable technology. Barry made a note of 3 addresses. He'd go during his lunch break. The morning passed slowly. Barry processed evidence mechanically, his mind only half engaged with the work. The other half was planning, calculating, building the framework for what came next. At 11:45 a.m., he stood up and grabbed his jacket. Taking lunch, he called to Marcus. Cool. Want me to grab you something? Nah, I'm good. Running errands. Barry left the building and got in his car, a 10-year-old sedan that was showing its age but still ran reliably. He drove toward the docks, navigating through downtown traffic. The electronics district was exactly as sketchy as he'd expected. Narrow streets, buildings with peeling paint, shops with barred windows and hand-painted signs. This was where people came when they needed technology and didn't want to explain why. Barry parked on a side street and walked into the first shop on his list. The interior was cramped and dimly lit. Shelves were packed with laptops, tablets, phones, all of varying age and condition. A man sat behind the counter, middle-aged, bored expression, not looking up from his newspaper. "Help you?" the man asked without enthusiasm. "Looking for a laptop," Barry said. "Something basic. Doesn't need to be new. Budget. 300. Cash." That got the man's attention. He looked up from his newspaper, eyes narrowing slightly as he assessed Barry. Young kid. Clean clothes. Probably not a criminal but definitely not here for legitimate reasons. Got a refurbished Dell in the back. 350. 300, Barry repeated. The man shrugged. 325 and I throw in a carrying case. Deal. 10 minutes later, Barry walked out with a laptop in a worn carrying case. No receipt. No record of sale. Just a cash transaction that left no paper trail connecting the device to Barry Allen. He put the laptop in his trunk and drove back to CCPD, arriving with 15 minutes left in his lunch break. Enough time to eat the sandwich he'd packed that morning and review his next steps. Tonight, he'd set up the digital infrastructure. VPN. Encrypted email. Secure browsing. Everything he needed to operate without leaving traces. And then he'd go after DeVoe's research. Barry got home at 6:15 p.m. His apartment was quiet and dark. He flipped on lights as he moved through the small space, dropping his keys on the kitchen counter and setting the laptop carrying case on his tiny dining table. First priority, food. He'd been burning through calories faster than normal since the transmigration. The enhanced intellect required more energy. His body was working harder even when he was sitting still. Barry made a quick dinner from what he had available. Pasta with canned sauce. Not gourmet but filling. He ate standing at the counter, thinking through the evening's tasks while he chewed mechanically. The laptop sat on the table, waiting. Barry finished eating, washed his dishes, and sat down at the table. He opened the laptop and powered it on. The machine took a minute to boot up, old hardware groaning to life. When it finally loaded, Barry was greeted with a basic desktop screen. The previous owner had wiped it clean. Good. He connected to his apartment's Wi-Fi and immediately went to work. First step, VPN installation. Barry navigated to the Proton VPN website and created an account using a burner email address he'd set up on his phone. He paid for a year of service using a prepaid debit card he'd bought with cash weeks ago. No connection to his real identity. First step, VPN installation. Barry navigated to the Proton VPN website and created an account using a burner email address he'd set up on his phone. He paid for a year of service using a prepaid debit card he'd bought with cash weeks ago. No connection to his real identity. The VPN software downloaded and installed. Barry configured it to route through servers in 3 different countries. Switzerland to Iceland to Romania. Each layer adding another degree of separation between his real location and his digital activity. Next, encrypted email. He set up a Proton Mail account under a fake identity. Random name generated by a website. Fake birthday. Fake location. The account existed but had no connection to Barry Allen whatsoever. Then, Tor browser installation. This took longer, the old laptop struggling with the download. But eventually it completed and Barry had access to the deep web, that layer of the internet where anonymity was the default and tracking was nearly impossible. By 8:30 p.m., his digital infrastructure was complete. Everything routed through multiple layers of encryption and anonymization. Even if someone tried to trace his activity, they'd hit dead ends and false trails. Barry tested it by running a location check. The websites he visited all thought he was accessing them from Iceland. Perfect. Now came the real work. Barry opened a text document and began researching Clifford DeVoe in detail. He already had basic information from his earlier reconnaissance at the university. Now he needed specifics. Personal details that could be weaponized for social engineering. DeVoe's wife, Merleise Mechanic. Her maiden name was visible on older social media posts from before they married. Mechanic. Security question answer number 1. DeVoe's undergraduate university, Princeton. Listed on his CV security question answer number 2. DeVoe's birthday, March 15, 1978. Public information from his faculty profile. Security question answer number 3. DeVoe's first pet, a dog named Einstein. Mentioned in a 2008 blog post about teaching methodologies where he joked about his childhood pet being smarter than some of his students. Security question answer number 4. Barry compiled everything into a document, cross-referencing details against common security question formats. Most systems used variations of the same questions. Mother's maiden name, first pet, birthplace, high school mascot, city where you met your spouse. All of it could be discovered with enough research. And Barry's enhanced intellect made that research trivial. By 10 p.m., he had a complete profile. Everything he needed to socially engineer access to DeVoe's accounts. Now he just needed to craft the attack vector. Barry opened a new document and started writing. The phishing email needed to look completely legitimate. Right tone, right formatting, right level of urgency without being overly dramatic. He pulled up examples of legitimate CCUIT security emails from his earlier research. Studied the formatting, the language, the signature blocks. Everything needed to match exactly. An hour later, Barry had his draft. Subject, urgent, mandatory password reset required. Asterisk from asterisk CCU IT security IT security at ccu.edu. Dear Professor DeVoe, this is an urgent notification from Central City University Information Technology Services. We have detected unauthorized access attempts on faculty accounts within the past 48 hours. As a precautionary measure, we are requiring all faculty members to immediately reset their passwords through our secure portal. To reset your password, please click the link below and log in with your current credentials. You will then be prompted to create a new password that meets our enhanced security requirements. Secure Password Reset Portal. Failure to complete this reset within 24 hours will result in temporary account suspension to protect your data. This is a mandatory security measure. Please complete the reset at your earliest convenience. Thank you for your cooperation in keeping CCU systems secure. Sincerely, CCU Information Technology Services, Central City University. iHelpDesk at ccu.edu, 555-0199/I-. Barry read through it 3 times, checking every detail. The tone was professional but urgent. The formatting matched legitimate university emails. The fake email address would route through a domain he'd set up to mirror the real CCU address. The link led to a fake login page Barry had built using a simple web template. It looked identical to the real CCU portal. When DeVoe entered his credentials, the page would capture them and store them in an encrypted database only Barry could access. Then it would redirect to the real password reset page so DeVoe wouldn't suspect anything was wrong. Perfect social engineering. Believable threat. Legitimate-looking solution. Minimal suspicion. Barry copied DeVoe's email address from the university directory and pasted it into the recipient field. His finger hovered over the send button. This was it. The point of no return. Once he sent this email, he was committing to cybercrime. Unauthorized access to computer systems. Identity theft. All of it technically illegal even if his intentions were ultimately heroic. But Barry had already made his choice. The original Barry Allen would have hesitated. Would have worried about the ethics. Would have talked himself out of it. This Barry Allen knew what needed to be done. He clicked send. The email vanished into the digital void, routed through his VPN and encrypted email service. Untraceable. Anonymous. Waiting for Clifford DeVoe to make the mistake of thinking it was legitimate. Barry closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. His heart rate was elevated slightly. Adrenaline in his system even though he was sitting safely in his apartment. Done. The attack was live. Now he just had to wait. Barry checked his phone. One news notification caught his eye. Queen's Gambit departure confirmed for Friday morning. Queens to embark on Pacific journey. 9 days. The Queen's Gambit would sink in 9 days. Barry's short positions were ready. His financial play was set up. DeVoe's data would be his within 48 hours if the phishing attack worked. Everything was coming together. Barry stood up and walked to his bedroom, suddenly exhausted. The mental effort of the day catching up to him. Enhanced intellect didn't eliminate the need for rest. He lay down on his mattress on the floor, staring at the ceiling. His mind refused to quiet down completely. Too many moving pieces. Too many variables. But for the first time since the transmigration, Barry felt like he was actually making progress. Real, tangible steps toward the future he was building. Coffee with Iris had gone well. His digital infrastructure was solid. The phishing attack was deployed. Phase 1 was in motion. Barry closed his eyes, letting sleep take him. In 9 days, the Queen's Gambit would sink and Oliver Queen would disappear. And Barry Allen would be ready to profit from it. 23 hours after sending the phishing email, Barry sat at his workstation in the CCPD crime lab, staring at a microscope slide without actually seeing it. His mind was split between 2 realities. The first was the physical world around him. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead. The chemical smell of the evidence processing solutions. The soft clicking of keyboards as other forensic technicians typed up reports. All of it familiar and mundane. The second reality existed on his encrypted laptop, currently hidden in his car 3 floors below. A laptop that might contain a notification telling him whether Clifford DeVoe had taken the bait. Or it might contain nothing. 23 hours of waiting. 23 hours of uncertainty eating at his enhanced mind like acid. Barry forced himself to focus on the slide. Blood sample from a domestic assault case. He needed to type the blood, run the analysis, write the report. Standard work that normally took him 45 minutes but his enhanced intellect could complete in 15. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Barry pulled it out under the desk, glancing at the screen. Text from Iris. Interview went well. They want me to do a follow-up piece on Queen Consolidated stock situation. Coffee to celebrate. Barry typed back quickly, that's great. Rain check? Swamped at work today. The reply came immediately, you're always swamped lately. But okay. This weekend. Definitely. Barry pocketed the phone and went back to his microscope. His mind ran probability calculations automatically. If DeVoe had checked his email in the last 23 hours, there was an 87% chance he'd clicked the phishing link. Most people checked university email at least once daily. The urgency of the message made it unlikely he'd ignore it. But 87% wasn't 100%. And the 13% chance of failure gnawed at him. Alan, you good? Barry looked up to see Marcus Chen standing beside his workstation, holding a coffee cup and wearing a concerned expression. Yeah, why? Barry kept his voice casual. You've been staring at that slide for 10 minutes without moving. Marcus gestured at the microscope. That's not like you. Usually you're done with samples in like 5 minutes and moving on to the next thing. Barry forced a smile. Just tired. Didn't sleep well last night. You feeling sick? You look kind of pale. I'm fine. Barry turned back to the microscope, making a show of adjusting the focus. Just need more coffee probably. Marcus lingered for another moment, then shrugged and walked back to his station. Barry waited until he was gone before exhaling slowly. He was getting sloppy. The distraction was showing. People were noticing. This couldn't continue. Working at CCPD while building his real plans was becoming impossible. His mind was too occupied with variables and timelines and contingencies to properly focus on processing evidence. He needed to quit. But not yet. Not until the Queen consolidated play paid off and he had real capital to work with. 8 more days. He just needed to hold it together for 8 more days. Barry finished the blood analysis in 12 minutes, typing up a report that was technically flawless but lacked the usual attention to detail he normally provided. Good enough. The case wasn't complicated anyway. At 11:47 a.m., Barry stood up and grabbed his jacket. Taking lunch, he called to the lab in general. Want me to grab you something? Marcus asked without looking up from his computer. Nah, running errands. Barry left the building, taking the stairs down 3 floors instead of waiting for the elevator. His heart rate was elevated. Not from the physical activity, from anticipation. He reached his car in the parking garage and unlocked it quickly, sliding into the driver's seat. The laptop bag sat in the passenger footwell where he'd hidden it under a jacket. Barry pulled out the laptop and powered it on. The old machine took forever to boot up. 47 seconds that felt like 47 minutes. Finally, the desktop loaded. Barry connected to his phone's hotspot and opened his encrypted browser, navigating to the server where the fake login portal logged all access attempts. One new notification. Barry's hand trembled slightly as he clicked it. Access log entry. Timestamp, 11:47 p.m., previous night. IP address traced to Central City University Network. Credentials entered successfully. Username, cdevoe@ccu.edu. Password captured and stored. Clifford DeVoe had taken the bait. Barry sat in his car, staring at the screen, barely breathing. His enhanced mind processed the implications at lightning speed. He had full access to DeVoe's university email account. That email was almost certainly connected to cloud storage, personal accounts, everything. Years of research. Experimental data. The intellectual foundation for the thinking cap that would eventually make DeVoe one of the most dangerous metahumans in Central City. All of it was now Barry's. He opened a new tab and navigated to the CCU email portal, entering DeVoe's captured credentials. The login screen accepted them without question, redirecting him to DeVoe's inbox. 847 unread emails. Most of it academic spam and administrative notices. But buried in there would be the real treasure. Correspondence with other researchers. Links to shared documents. Calendar invitations that would reveal DeVoe's schedule and movements. Barry's fingers flew across the keyboard. He couldn't download everything from a car in a parking garage using his phone's hotspot. Too slow. Too risky. He needed to be home with his secured network and proper bandwidth. But he could scout. Get the lay of the land. Identify the high-value targets. He opened DeVoe's sent folder, scanning subject lines. Most were replies to students or administrative emails. Nothing interesting. Barry switched to the calendar application. DeVoe's schedule loaded. Teaching hours. Office hours. Faculty meetings. All standard academic obligations. Then Barry saw something that made his blood run cold. Calendar event. 2 weeks from today. 2 p.m. meeting with Dr. Harrison Wells, Star Labs recruitment. Barry stared at that entry, his enhanced mind racing. Star Labs was recruiting DeVoe. They wanted to collaborate on neural enhancement research. This was earlier than the TV timeline. Way earlier. In the show, DeVoe hadn't connected with Star Labs until much later, after years of independent work. This timeline was different. Accelerated. DeVoe's research was progressing faster than it should be. If Star Labs got involved, they'd pour resources into his work. Funding. Equipment. Other brilliant minds to collaborate with. DeVoe would complete the thinking cap years ahead of schedule. Maybe even before the particle accelerator explosion. That couldn't happen. Barry needed time. Years to prepare. To build wealth and skills and his own research base. If DeVoe became superhuman too early, it would destabilize everything. Barry's fingers moved without conscious thought. He clicked into the calendar event, opening the full details. Invitation sent by Dr. Wells's assistant. Accepted by DeVoe 3 days ago. Location, Star Labs, Conference Room B. Barry deleted the event. Then he opened DeVoe's email, searching for the original invitation. Found it. A polite message from Star Labs expressing interest in DeVoe's neural enhancement research and requesting a meeting to discuss potential collaboration opportunities. Barry deleted that too. Then he composed a new email using DeVoe's account. **hwells@starlabs.com. *subject *re, collaboration opportunity. Dr. Wells, thank you for your interest in my research. Unfortunately, I must decline at this time. I'm committed to several other projects and don't have the bandwidth to take on new collaborations in the foreseeable future. I appreciate you thinking of me and wish you the best with your work at Star Labs. Best regards. Clifford DeVoe. Barry read it 3 times, checking the tone. Professional. Polite. Firm but not rude. Exactly the kind of email an overworked professor would send when turning down an opportunity. He clicked send. The email vanished into the digital void, sent from DeVoe's account with no trace that Barry had been the one to write it. As far as anyone would know, Clifford DeVoe had simply declined Star Labs' offer. Barry deleted the sent email from DeVoe's sent folder. Cleared the trash. Removed every trace that the correspondence had ever existed. Done. Star Labs would never follow up. DeVoe would never know they'd reached out. The collaboration that could have accelerated his research by years had been prevented before it even began. Barry closed the laptop and sat back in his driver's seat, heart pounding. What he'd just done went beyond simple data theft. He'd actively altered the timeline, changed the course of events, prevented a connection that might have led to earlier metahuman threats. Was that good or bad? His mind couldn't calculate the full implications. Too many variables, too many unknowns, but it felt necessary. And right now, that would have to be enough. Barry checked the time. 12:15 p.m. He'd been in his car for almost 30 minutes. People would notice if he took too long for lunch. He needed to get back to the lab, act normal, finish the workday. Then tonight he could properly extract all of DeVoe's data from the comfort and security of his apartment. Barry pocketed the laptop and started his car, pulling out of the parking garage. As he drove back towards CCPD headquarters, his phone buzzed with another text. Unknown number, this is Marcus from the gym. Tuesday evening spot opened up for private lesson. You interested? Barry stopped at a red light and typed back one-handed, yes. What time? 7 p.m. Don't be late. I'll be there. The light turned green. Barry accelerated, mind already shifting gears. Tuesday evening. Tomorrow. Private combat lesson with Marcus while Clifford DeVoe would be in his lab doing research. Perfect timing. Perfect cover. And it meant Barry could start accelerating his physical training while simultaneously stealing intellectual property from a future supervillain. Multitasking at its finest. Barry got back to CCPD at 12:23 p.m. and returned to his workstation. The afternoon passed slowly. More evidence processing. More reports. All of it mechanical and boring and necessary to maintain his cover. At 5:30 p.m., Barry clocked out and drove home. His apartment had never looked more welcoming. He dropped his keys on the counter, grabbed a protein bar from the pantry, and sat down at his dining table with the laptop. Time to work. Barry powered up the machine and reconnected to his secured VPN network. 3-layer encryption routing through Switzerland, Iceland, and Romania. Completely untraceable. He logged into DeVoe's email account and began the systematic extraction of everything valuable. First priority, cloud storage. DeVoe had a university Google Drive account with 847 gigabytes of data. Research papers. Experimental notes. Design schematics. Lecture materials. Personal files. All of it accessible through his compromised credentials. Barry created a download queue, prioritizing anything related to neural enhancement, electromagnetic stimulation, or cognitive augmentation. The files began transferring to an encrypted external hard drive. Progress bar showed 14 hours remaining for complete download. Fine. He'd let it run overnight. Next priority, email correspondence. Barry set up filters to copy all emails containing keywords like research, experiment, neural, cognitive, enhancement, brain, stimulation. Thousands of messages matched the criteria. He copied them all to a separate encrypted folder. Then he went through DeVoe's calendar systematically, documenting every pattern. Teaching schedule, lab access times, faculty meeting attendance, office hours, everything that would reveal when DeVoe was predictable and when he was vulnerable. Tuesday and Thursday evenings. 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. consistent lab sessions in room 7B of the physics building basement. Restricted access space where DeVoe kept his experimental equipment and physical research materials. Barry cross-referenced that against building security schedules. Campus security did rounds every hour. Cameras covered the main hallways but not individual lab spaces. Badge access was required but could be bypassed with basic lockpicking if you knew what you were doing. And Barry, with his enhanced intellect, was already researching lockpicking techniques. His mind absorbed the information like a sponge. Tumbler mechanisms. Tension wrenches, rake picks, all of it made perfect sense. Simple mechanical systems that could be defeated with the right knowledge and tools. He added by lockpicking set to his mental task list. By 9 p.m., Barry had a complete map of DeVoe's digital life. Email patterns, cloud storage structure, calendar habits, collaboration networks, everything organized and backed up on 3 separate encrypted drives. The download queue was still running. 10 hours remaining. Barry left it going and closed the laptop. His body ached, not from physical exertion but from tension. Hours of sitting hunched over a computer, adrenaline slowly draining out of his system. Barry changed into workout clothes and dropped to the floor. Push UPS first. He managed 43 before his arms gave out. Better than last week's 37. Progress was slow but measurable. Sit UPS next. 72 before his ABS started cramping. Then squats. 112. His body was changing. Still weak compared to what he needed to become, but improving. The foundation was being built 1 rep at a time. Barry's phone buzzed while he was catching his breath. Text from Iris. Barry's phone buzzed while he was catching his breath. Text from Iris. Just finished writing the Queen Consolidated piece. Want to read it before I submit? Barry hesitated. He should say no, stay focused on his plans. But pushing Iris away completely would damage their relationship. But his perception told him she was reaching out for a reason. Seeking validation. Wanting connection. He typed back, sure. Send it over. The article came through as a document link. Barry opened it on his phone, reading while still lying on his apartment floor. The piece was good. Really good. Iris had interviewed several financial analysts about Queen Consolidated stock volatility, discussed the risks of the Queen family's public profile being so tied to company performance, raised questions about succession planning and leadership stability. She'd even included a quote from a hedge fund manager about the potential impact if something happened to Robert or Oliver Queen. The stock would crater overnight. We're talking 30–40% drops in the immediate aftermath. Queen Consolidated's entire value proposition is built on the Queen family name. Barry's noted the irony. Iris had no idea she was writing about something that would happen in 7 days. The article would seem prophetic after the yacht sank. He typed back, this is really good. You should definitely submit it. You think? I'm worried it's too negative. It's realistic. That's different from negative. You're raising legitimate concerns about corporate governance. Thanks, Barry. You always know what to say. There was a pause. 3 dots appeared indicating Iris was typing. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, want to grab dinner this weekend? Celebrate me maybe getting published. Barry stared at that message. Dinner with Iris. Not coffee. Not casual hanging out. Dinner. The word choice was deliberate. He could read between the lines. Iris was interested. Not just as childhood friends. As something more. The coffee date had planted seeds. Now she was watering them. This was getting complicated. Barry's meta-knowledge told him that in the original timeline, he and Iris eventually ended up together. But this wasn't that timeline. And Barry had different plans. Plans that involved Wonder Woman, Supergirl, Killer Frost. Multiple relationships. A harem that the original Barry Allen would never have had the confidence to pursue. But that was future Barry. Years away. Right now, he was still building the foundation. Still weak. Still ordinary. And Iris was here. Real, available, and interested. Barry made a calculated decision. Romance wasn't the priority, but it also wasn't something to avoid completely. Especially not with someone who mattered. Someone he genuinely cared about even if his feelings weren't the desperate, all-consuming love the original Barry had felt. He typed back, Saturday night? I'll pick the place. It's a date. Barry smiled despite himself. A date. Iris had actually called it a date. No ambiguity. No pretending it was just friends hanging out. This was happening. He set the phone down and went back to exercising. Planks this time. Holding position until his whole body shook. 2 minutes and 18 seconds before he collapsed. Getting stronger. Slowly but surely. His phone buzzed again. This time a news notification. Queen's Gambit sets sail Friday morning. Robert and Oliver Queen embark on Pacific journey. A news notification. Queen's Gambit sets sail Friday morning. Robert and Oliver Queen embark on Pacific journey. 7 days. The yacht would depart in 7 days. Barry needed to execute his short positions Friday morning before the market opened. $9,747 positioned to become at least $17,000 if his calculations were correct. Maybe more if the crash was worse than he expected. Barry stood up and walked to his laptop, checking the download progress. Still running. 8 hours and 43 minutes remaining. By morning, he'd have everything. DeVoe's complete research archive. Years of work on neural enhancement. The intellectual foundation for the thinking cap. And Thursday evening, he'd have the physical research too. The lab equipment specifications. The experimental prototypes. Everything DeVoe had built but not documented digitally. Barry pulled up a shopping website on his phone and searched for lockpicking sets. Found a professional-grade kit for $87. Ordered it with expedited shipping to arrive Wednesday. Everything was coming together. Money. Research. Skills. Training. All the pieces aligning. Barry closed the laptop and headed to bed. His enhanced mind refused to fully quiet down, running scenarios and calculations even as sleep pulled at him. Tuesday evening, combat training with Marcus. Learn real fighting technique. Push his body harder. Wednesday, receive lock-picking tools. Practice on his own apartment door until he could bypass the lock in under 30 seconds. Thursday evening, infiltrate Lab 7B while DeVoe was occupied. Steal or photograph everything physical. Complete the data extraction. Friday morning, execute the Queen Consolidated short positions. Make the money that would fund the next phase. Saturday night, dinner with Iris. Navigate the romantic complication without commitment. Everything had a timeline. Everything had a purpose. Barry closed his eyes and let sleep take him. In 7 days, Oliver Queen would disappear and Barry Allen would stop being poor. In 4 years, the particle accelerator would explode and Barry Allen would become something unprecedented. But first, he had to survive being ordinary for just a little bit longer. The CCPD crime lab was quiet on Tuesday afternoon. Most of the forensic technicians had already processed their urgent cases. The ones remaining were handling routine work that could wait until tomorrow if needed. Barry sat at his workstation, typing up a report on a burglary case while his mind was elsewhere. The download had completed overnight. 847 gigabytes of data, all of it now stored on 3 separate encrypted hard drives hidden in his apartment. DeVoe's entire research archive. Every paper, every experiment, every note and schematic and hypothesis. Barry had spent 2 hours that morning skimming through the files, his enhanced intellect absorbing information at an incredible rate. DeVoe was brilliant, no question. His theoretical frameworks for neural enhancement were years ahead of mainstream neuroscience. But they were still theoretical, still incomplete. The thinking cap didn't exist yet. Wouldn't exist for years at the current pace. Unless Barry's interference with the Star Labs meeting had actually slowed things down even more. Good. That bought time. Barry finished his report at 4:47 p.m. and submitted it. Then he packed up his workstation, grabbed his gym bag from under his desk, and headed for the door. Leaving early, Marcus Chen called from across the lab. Got an appointment, Barry said without stopping. See you tomorrow. He was out of the building before anyone could ask follow-up questions. The drive to the MMA gym took 23 minutes through afternoon traffic. Barry used the time to mentally prepare. Tonight wasn't just training. It was assessment. Marcus was a retired professional fighter. He'd know immediately whether Barry had any natural talent or was just another civilian wannabe playing at combat sports. Barry needed to impress him. Needed to prove he was worth the investment of private lessons. The gym was in the industrial district, a converted warehouse with concrete floors and minimal amenities. No fancy equipment. No mirrors. Just space, heavy bags, and people who took fighting seriously. The gym was in the industrial district, a converted warehouse with concrete floors and minimal amenities. No fancy equipment. No mirrors. Just space, heavy bags, and people who took fighting seriously. Barry walked in at 6:52 p.m. The place smelled like sweat and rubber mats. A few guys were sparring in one corner. Someone was working a speed bag in another. Most of the floor was empty though. This wasn't peak hours. Marcus stood near the cage in the center of the space, wrapping his hands with athletic tape. He looked up when Barry approached and nodded. You're early. Good. Marcus gestured at a bench. Get changed. We're starting with basics. Barry dropped his gym bag and pulled out workout clothes. Simple shorts and a compression shirt. He changed quickly, hyper-aware of how unimpressive his body looked compared to the other men in the gym. Lean but not muscular. Athletic but not powerful. Yet. Not powerful yet. You ever trained before? Marcus asked when Barry returned. No formal training. Just been working out at home for a few weeks. Marcus circled Barry slowly, assessing. Why do you want to learn? I want to be able to protect myself. From what? Barry met his eyes. From whatever comes. Marcus stopped circling. His expression was unreadable. Finally, he nodded. All right. Let's see what you can do. Hit me. Barry blinked. What? Hit me? Marcus spread his arms slightly, leaving himself open. Best shot you've got. Don't hold back. This was a test. Barry recognized it immediately. Marcus wanted to see how he moved, how he thought, whether he had any natural instincts or was completely untrained. Barry didn't overthink it. He stepped forward and threw a straight right punch at Marcus's face. Whiff. Marcus moved. Not fast. Not dramatically. Just a small shift of his head and Barry's fist sailed past empty air. Off balance. Overextended. Completely vulnerable. Marcus could have destroyed him in that moment. Counterpunched. Taken him down. Ended the fight before it started. Instead, he just nodded. Again. Barry reset and threw a left jab. Marcus slipped it easily. Right hook. Dodged. Left uppercut. Stepped back, making Barry miss by inches. Every punch Barry threw, Marcus avoided with minimal effort. It was like fighting smoke. Or trying to hit water. No matter how hard Barry tried, his fists found nothing but air. After 15 failed attempts, Barry stopped, breathing hard. You're fast. No. Marcus shook his head. You're predictable. You telegraph every punch before you throw it. Shoulder twitches. Weight shifts. Everything about your body language says exactly what you're about to do. Barry frowned. So how do I fix that? Training. Lots of it. Marcus gestured toward the heavy bags. But first I need to teach you how to actually throw a punch. What you were doing just now, that's how you break your hand. For the next hour, Marcus broke down the fundamental mechanics of striking. Proper fist formation, hip rotation, weight transfer, breathing, all the tiny details that separated effective punching from flailing. Barry absorbed it like a sponge. His enhanced intellect made learning physical techniques faster than normal. After Marcus demonstrated something once, Barry's body could approximate the movement. After 3 repetitions, he had it down. After 10, it felt natural. Marcus noticed. You're a fast learner. I pay attention. Most people do. You actually retain it. Marcus threw a jab at the heavy bag, demonstrating proper form again. That's rare. Usually takes months to get basics down solid. You're getting them in minutes. Because Barry's brain was processing information many times faster than normal, connecting neural pathways, building muscle memory through accelerated pattern recognition. But he couldn't explain that. I just want to be good at this, Barry said instead. Why? Marcus stopped working the bag and turned to face him. Most people who train here are either trying to compete or they got jumped once and want to avoid it happening again. You don't look like either. So what's driving this? Barry considered how much truth to give. Finally, he said, I've spent my whole life being weak. being someone who needed protecting. I'm done with that. I want to be the one who can protect others. Marcus studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled slightly. That's a good reason. Better than most. They went back to training. Barry worked the heavy bag until his knuckles ached and sweat soaked through his shirt. Marcus corrected his form constantly, adjusting angles and stances and breathing patterns. By 8 p.m., Barry's arms felt like lead. But he'd thrown over 500 punches. And the last 100 had actually felt right. Powerful. Connected. Progress. That's enough for today. Marcus unwrapped his hand tape. You did good. Better than I expected for someone with zero experience. When can we do this again? Thursday. Same time. But only if you promise to work on what I taught you between now and then. Practice at home. Get the movements down so deep they're instinctive. I will. Barry grabbed his gym bag. Thanks, Marcus. Don't thank me yet. This is the easy part. Wait until we start actual sparring. Barry left the gym at 8:17 p.m., body aching but mind energized. He'd survived the assessment. Proven himself worth training. And more importantly, he'd taken another step toward becoming dangerous. He checked his phone while walking to his car. Text from Iris. My article got accepted. They're publishing it Thursday. I'm so excited. Barry smiled and typed back, that's amazing. Congrats. Still on for Saturday dinner? Absolutely. Where are we going? It's a surprise. I hate surprises. You'll like this one. Barry got in his car and drove home, mind already planning. Saturday dinner needed to be somewhere nice but not overly fancy. Somewhere that said he'd put thought into it without seeming like he was trying too hard. There was an Italian place downtown that Iris had mentioned months ago. Small, intimate, good food. Perfect. Barry made a mental note to call for reservations tomorrow. When he got home, he found a package waiting outside his apartment door. The lockpicking set, delivered early. Barry brought it inside and opened it immediately. Professional-grade tools. Tension wrenches in multiple sizes. Rake picks. Hook picks. Diamond picks. Everything he needed to bypass standard door locks. Barry spread the tools on his dining table and pulled up instructional videos on his phone. His enhanced mind absorbed the techniques rapidly. Tumbler mechanics. Pressure points. The feel of pins setting inside a lock cylinder. After 20 minutes of study, Barry grabbed the basic rake pick and tension wrench and walked to his apartment door. He inserted the tools into the lock and began working. First attempt, 47 seconds. Second attempt, 39 seconds. Third attempt, 28 seconds. Fourth attempt, 19 seconds. Fifth attempt, 14 seconds. By midnight, Barry could bypass his apartment lock in under 8 seconds consistently. Fast enough that anyone walking by would just think he was using a key. Smooth enough that the lock showed no damage. Perfect. Barry practiced for another hour, working on different lock types he'd bought at a hardware store for practice. Deadbolts. Chain locks. Padlocks. Each one had its own quirks and techniques. His comprehension speed made the learning curve trivial. What should have taken months of practice compressed into hours. By 1 a.m., Barry was confident he could handle any standard security lock he'd encounter at Central City University. He set an alarm for 6 a.m. and went to bed, mind racing with plans for Thursday evening. Clifford DeVoe would be in Lab 7B from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., conducting his neural enhancement experiments. The lab was in the basement of the physics building. Restricted access. Security cameras in the hallways but not inside individual labs. Barry would enter the building at 7:30 p.m. when the evening rush was over and most students had cleared out. He'd take the stairs to the basement, bypassing the main elevators where cameras were concentrated. Pick the lock on Lab 7B. Enter quickly and quietly. Then photograph everything. Equipment specifications. Experimental setups. Physical notes and prototypes. Anything that wasn't digitally stored. Total time inside the lab, 15 minutes maximum. In and out before anyone noticed. It was risky, but necessary. The digital files gave him theory. The physical lab would give him practical implementation details. Together, they'd provide a complete picture of DeVoe's work. Barry closed his eyes, running through the plan repeatedly until every step was memorized. Every contingency accounted for. In 48 hours, he'd have everything he needed from Clifford DeVoe. And in 5 days, Oliver Queen would disappear and Barry Allen would start becoming rich. Everything was accelerating. The timeline tightening. The game moving faster. Barry fell asleep with a smile on his face. He was done being ordinary. Done being weak. Done waiting for destiny to find him. From now on, he was building his own future. And nobody, not even the universe itself, was going to stop him. I hope so, he thought as he entered deep sleep. Thursday evening arrived with rain. Barry sat in his car 3 blocks from Central City University, watching water stream down the windshield. The physics building was visible in the distance, lit windows glowing against the dark sky. His phone showed 6:47 p.m. Clifford DeVoe would be in his office right now, wrapping up office hours before heading to Lab 7B for his evening research session. Barry had 17 minutes before DeVoe made that move. The lockpicking set sat in his jacket pocket. A small digital camera with no wireless connectivity was in his other pocket. No phone, no smartwatch, nothing that could be traced or tracked. He'd left his personal phone at home, powered off and hidden in a drawer. This infiltration had to be perfect. No mistakes, no evidence left behind. Barry's enhanced mind ran through the plan one final time. Enter through the east stairwell at 7:04 p.m. Campus security did rounds at 7 p.m. sharp, which meant the east side would be clear for at least 45 minutes. Take the stairs to the basement. Approach Lab 7B from the service corridor where cameras had blind spots. Pick the lock. Enter. Photograph everything. Exit within 15 minutes maximum. Simple. Clean. Professional. Except Barry's mind kept circling back to a problem he'd been ignoring. The digital intrusion into DeVoe's email had worked perfectly. Too perfectly. He'd stolen credentials, downloaded files, even sent an email from DeVoe's account without anyone noticing. But that was amateur hour compared to what real cybersecurity looked like. Barry had been thinking like a criminal. He needed to think like a security expert. Because right now, if anyone actually audited DeVoe's account, they'd find traces login locations that didn't match DeVoe's normal patterns, access times that were suspicious, download activity that was unusual. The VPN and encryption made tracing difficult, but not impossible, especially not for someone with resources and motivation. He needed to clean up his tracks, really clean them, not just hide the evidence but eliminate it entirely. Barry checked the time again. 6:51 p.m. He had time before the infiltration. Not much, but enough. He pulled out the burner laptop from under his seat and powered it on. Connected to a coffee shop's Wi-Fi 2 blocks away using a long-range adapter. Routed through his VPN. Logged into DeVoe's university email through a fresh anonymous session. First step, check the account activity logs. Every email provider kept records of login locations and times. Barry pulled up DeVoe's activity history and scanned through it. There. His unauthorized logins stood out like red flags. IP addresses from Iceland due to his VPN routing. Access times at 2 a.m. when DeVoe was definitely asleep. Download activity that was massive compared to normal usage. Any halfway competent security audit would spot this immediately. Barry's fingers moved across the keyboard rapidly. He needed to edit these logs. Delete the suspicious entries. Make it look like nothing unusual had ever happened. But university email systems didn't let users edit activity logs. Those were stored server-side, protected specifically to prevent tampering, which meant Barry needed to get into the university's email server itself. His enhanced mind processed the challenge. CCU's email was hosted on Google Workspace. Enterprise-level security, multi-factor authentication on admin accounts, regular security audits. Not trivial to breach, but not impossible either. Barry opened a new tab and started researching Google Workspace vulnerabilities. His enhanced intellect absorbed information at incredible speed. Exploit databases, security forums, leaked documentation from previous breaches. He found what he needed in 8 minutes. A privilege escalation vulnerability in the admin console that had been patched 3 weeks ago. But universities were notoriously slow to update systems. If CCU hadn't applied the patch yet, Barry could exploit it to gain temporary admin access. He tested it, navigated to CCU's admin login portal and tried the exploit. Access granted. Access granted. The university hadn't patched yet. Good. Barry was in the admin console with full privileges. He navigated to the email audit logs and found DeVoe's account. Pulled up the detailed activity history including the entries Barry had created. He deleted them systematically. Every suspicious login, every unusual download, every access pattern that didn't match DeVoe's normal behavior. Then he went further. He modified the legitimate logs to add noise. Created false entries showing DeVoe accessing his email from various campus locations at random times. Made his activity look erratic and unpredictable so that even if someone looked, they'd just see a professor checking email sporadically throughout the day. Perfect cover. The suspicious activity was gone. Replaced with patterns that looked completely normal. Barry cleared his own admin console access from the logs, removing all evidence that anyone had ever used the privilege escalation exploit. Then he logged out and closed the connection. Done. His digital intrusion was now invisible. Even a professional security audit would find nothing unusual. Barry checked the time. 7:02 p.m. Perfect timing. He shut down the laptop, tucked it back under the seat, and grabbed his lock-picking tools and camera. Time for the physical infiltration. The rain had lightened to a drizzle. Barry walked quickly across campus, hood up, head down. Just another student heading to the library. Nothing suspicious. The physics building loomed ahead. Barry circled around to the east entrance where the stairwell access was. Swiped a student ID he'd cloned weeks ago from a card he'd found in the crime lab lost and found. The door clicked open. Inside, the building was quiet. Most classes were done for the day. A few grad students worked in upper floor labs but the basement level would be mostly empty. Barry took the stairs down 2 at a time. His enhanced mind tracked the layout perfectly from the floor plans he'd memorized. Service corridor on the left. Lab 7B was the third door. He reached the basement and paused, listening. Silence. No voices. No footsteps. Good. Barry moved down the service corridor, staying close to the wall where the camera angles had blind spots. Reached Lab 7B and checked the door. Locked, as expected. Standard university deadbolt. Child's play. He pulled out his rake pick and tension wrench. Inserted them smoothly into the lock. Applied pressure and worked the pins. Click. 6 seconds. The lock opened. Barry slipped inside and closed the door behind him, locking it from the inside. The lab was dark except for emergency lighting strips along the floor. He pulled out a small flashlight and swept the beam across the space. Lab equipment covered every surface. Oscilloscopes, function generators, EEG monitoring systems, electromagnetic field generators. All of it focused on a central apparatus that looked like a modified helmet connected to a dozen different machines. The prototype thinking cap. Barry's breath caught. He'd seen the digital files, but seeing the physical device was different. This was real, tangible, proof that Clifford DeVoe was further along than anyone realized. He raised his camera and started photographing everything. The helmet from multiple angles, the equipment specifications visible on control panels, handwritten notes taped to monitors, circuit diagrams pinned to a cork board on the wall. Click, click, click. His enhanced mind cataloged everything automatically. Electromagnetic frequency settings, neural stimulation patterns, power supply configurations, safety protocols, error logs showing previous test failures. DeVoe had tested this thing multiple times. The logs showed dates going back 6 months. Brief sessions, 5 minutes maximum. Notes about headaches and visual distortions afterward. He was being cautious, smart, not pushing the technology too fast. But the results were promising. Notes indicated measurable increases in cognitive processing speed during active stimulation. Subject completed complex mathematics 3.7x faster during trial session. Effects lasted approximately 40 minutes post-stimulation. Barry photographed those notes carefully. This was gold. Proof of concept. Evidence that the technology actually worked. He moved to the equipment itself, photographing serial numbers and model information. Everything he'd need to source identical components or find suitable alternatives. His camera's memory card filled rapidly. 400 photos and counting. A sound outside the door made Barry freeze. Footsteps in the hallway. Moving closer. Barry killed his flashlight instantly and crouched behind a lab bench. His heart hammered in his chest. Security patrol, he thought. Random student? DeVoe coming to the lab early. The footsteps stopped outside Lab 7B. Barry held his breath. His enhanced mind calculated escape routes. The lab had no windows. One door. No alternate exits. If someone came in, he was trapped. The door handle rattled. Someone testing it. Finding it locked. Then the footsteps moved on. Continued down the hallway. Faded into silence. Barry exhaled slowly, forcing his heart rate down. That was too close. He'd been in the lab for 12 minutes. He needed to finish and get out. He stood up and took another sweep of the lab with his flashlight, making sure he hadn't missed anything critical. Spotted a filing cabinet in the corner. Pulled it open carefully. Physical notebooks. Research journals. DeVoe's handwritten notes going back years. Barry photographed page after page, working as fast as he dared. The handwriting was terrible but readable. Equations. Diagrams. Thought experiments about neural enhancement and consciousness expansion. One passage caught Barry's eye. The primary challenge remains neural degradation. Extended stimulation causes cellular damage to cortical tissue. Subjects experience headaches, nausea, and cognitive impairment 24 to 48 hours post-session. Current hypothesis, electromagnetic fields are too broadly targeted. Need more precise neural pathway stimulation to avoid collateral damage. Possible solution, nanoscale targeting using magnetic nanoparticles as neural pathway markers. Barry photographed that page 3 times from different angles to make sure it was perfectly legible. This was the critical weakness. The reason DeVoe's thinking cap eventually destroyed his body in the original timeline. Too much broad-spectrum stimulation. Not enough precision. Barry's enhanced mind was already working on solutions. Targeted neural stimulation using adaptive frequency modulation. Feedback loops monitoring neural health in real time. Safety cutoffs that would prevent damage before it occurred. He could build something better. Something that wouldn't destroy the user. But he needed more information first. Needed to understand the fundamental principles thoroughly before attempting his own design. Barry finished photographing the notebooks and carefully closed the filing cabinet exactly as he'd found it. Swept the lab one final time with his flashlight, making sure everything was in its original position. No evidence that anyone had been here. He checked his watch. 7:19 p.m. 19 minutes total time in the lab. 4 minutes longer than planned but acceptable. Barry moved to the door and listened carefully. Silence in the hallway. He unlocked the door from the inside and eased it open slowly, checking both directions. Clear. He slipped out and relocked the door behind him. Wiped the door handle with his sleeve to remove any potential fingerprints. Then he walked quickly back to the stairwell, maintaining his casual student persona. Up the stairs. Out the east entrance. Across campus through the drizzle. Barry reached his car at 7:26 p.m. and got inside, locking the doors immediately. His hands were shaking slightly. Adrenaline crash. The infiltration had worked perfectly, but the near miss with those footsteps had rattled him more than he wanted to admit. He sat in the driver's seat for 5 minutes, just breathing, processing, calming down. Then he started the car and drove home, obeying every traffic law meticulously. No reason to get pulled over tonight with stolen research photos in his camera. When he reached his apartment, Barry went straight to his laptop and began the transfer process. Connected the camera via cable, not wireless. Copied all 673 photos to an encrypted drive. Then he copied them again to 2 more backup drives. Triple redundancy. If one drive failed, he still had the others. Barry opened the photos and started reviewing them systematically. His enhanced mind absorbed every detail, every equation, every diagram, every note. DeVoe's research was brilliant but flawed. The theoretical foundation was sound. The experimental approach was methodical, but the execution had critical weaknesses that would lead to the neural degradation issues Barry had read about in the notes. The problem was that DeVoe didn't fully understand the neuroplasticity implications of electromagnetic stimulation. He was treating the brain like a static computer that could be overclocked. But the brain was adaptive, dynamic. It responded to stimulation by changing its own structure. Repeated use of DeVoe's thinking cap would cause the brain to become dependent on external stimulation. Neural pathways would deteriorate without it, like a muscle that atrophied because an exoskeleton did all the work. That's why DeVoe eventually became wheelchair-bound in the original timeline. His body degraded because his supercharged brain couldn't maintain normal autonomic functions anymore. Barry needed a different approach, something that enhanced neural function without creating dependency, something that worked with the brain's natural plasticity instead of against it. He opened a new document on his laptop and started writing. Not copying DeVoe's notes. Creating his own theoretical framework based on what he'd learned. Adaptive Neural Enhancement Theory v1.0. Core principle neural enhancement must be temporary and non-invasive to prevent dependency and degradation. Mechanism targeted electromagnetic pulses stimulate specific neural pathways related to cognitive processing while simultaneously promoting natural neurogenesis and synaptic plasticity. Enhancement fades gradually as the brain adapts and strengthens its own pathways. Result each session of enhancement trains the brain to function at higher levels naturally. Over time, the user becomes genuinely smarter without needing the device. Barry's fingers flew across the keyboard. His enhanced intellect made connections that DeVoe had never considered. Frequency modulation patterns that would encourage neuroplasticity. Pulse timing that would align with the brain's natural theta wave rhythms. Safety protocols that would monitor neural health and automatically adjust stimulation levels. He wrote for 3 hours straight, creating equations, drawing diagrams, building a complete theoretical model for a thinking cap that would actually work without destroying the user. By 10:47 p.m., he had a working theory. On paper, at least. Now he needed to test it. But not on himself. Not yet. He needed to build a prototype first. Test it on something. Make sure it actually worked before putting it on his own head. Barry leaned back in his chair, mind racing. He'd need equipment. A lot of it. Electromagnetic field generators. EEG monitoring systems. Signal processors. None of it was illegal, but all of it was expensive. His current capital was $53,000 total. Enough for a basic prototype. Barely. Barry opened a spreadsheet and started pricing out components. Medical-grade EEG system, $8,000. Electromagnetic field generators, $12,000 for a set of 6. Signal processing computer, $4,000. Miscellaneous sensors and wiring, $3,000. Total, $27,000 just for the core equipment. He could afford it, but it would wipe out half his available capital. Worth it. If the thinking cap worked, he'd be smart enough to make that money back tenfold within weeks. Barry started placing orders using his burner laptop and a prepaid credit card, shipping to a storage unit he'd rented under a fake name. Everything untraceable, everything deniable. By midnight, he'd ordered everything he needed. Delivery would take 2 weeks for some of the specialized equipment. That was fine. It gave him time to prepare, to study, to make sure his theoretical model was actually sound before he started building hardware. His phone buzzed. Text from Iris. You awake? Can't sleep. Thinking about the Queens. It's so sad. Barry stared at that message. Tomorrow was Friday. The Queen's gambit would sink. Oliver and Robert Queen would disappear. Iris would be devastated by a tragedy she couldn't have prevented. And Barry would profit from it. The weight of that knowledge sat heavy in his chest. Not guilt exactly. More like awareness of the gap between what he knew and what everyone else thought was real. He typed back, yeah, I'm up. Working on a project. You okay? Not really. Feel like the world is getting darker. It's not all dark. Some good things still happen. Name one. Your article getting published. That's good. There was a long pause. Then, thanks Barry. You always know what to say. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow will be better. Liar. But I appreciate it. Night. Night. Barry set his phone down and stared at his laptop screen. The equipment orders. The theoretical models. The stolen research. All of it building towards something unprecedented. But it came with costs. Emotional distance from people he cared about. Lies stacked on lies. Moral compromises that the original Barry Allen would never have made. Is this worth it? He thought. Becoming strong enough to save people but losing pieces of my humanity along the way. He couldn't answer that question. Some things couldn't be calculated. Barry closed his laptop and went to bed. Tomorrow the Queen's gambit would sink. Tomorrow he'd make money from tragedy. Tomorrow the timeline would accelerate toward the future he was trying to shape. But tonight, he was just a 23-year-old guy lying in the dark, wondering if he was becoming something better or something worse. Friday morning arrived with news that shook Central City. Barry woke at 6 a.m. to multiple notifications on his phone. News alerts, text messages, Social media going crazy. Breaking, Queen's Gambit missing in North China Sea. Developing, search and rescue operation for Queen family yacht. Robert Queen, Oliver Queen presumed lost at sea. It happened. Exactly as Barry knew it would. Exactly as he'd prepared for. He grabbed his burner laptop and logged into his brokerage accounts through the VPN. Queen Consolidated was already down 8% in pre-market trading. The news had broken at 5:17 a.m. Eastern Time. Wall Street was reacting fast. Barry's short positions from yesterday were already profitable. He'd queued the trades to execute at market open, betting that Queen Consolidated would drop. Now it was dropping faster than he'd even calculated. The market opened at 9:30 a.m. Barry watched from his apartment, coffee going cold on the table beside him. Queen Consolidated opened at $44.12, down from yesterday's close of $48.15. An immediate 8.3% drop. Then it kept falling. Sell orders flooded in. Panic selling. Institutional investors dumping positions. Retail traders following the herd. $43. $42.50. $42. By 10 a.m., the stock was at $40.87, down 15% in 30 minutes. Barry covered his short positions at $40.50, locking in profits. His $9,747 had become $17,319 in less than 24 hours, a 77.7% return. He immediately reinvested everything into purchasing Queen Consolidated shares at the reduced price. Long-term play now. The stock would recover over the next 5 years as the company stabilized. And when Oliver Queen returned from the dead, it would spike hard. Barry closed his laptop and sat back, processing what he'd just done. Made almost $8,000 from a tragedy. Profited from the presumed deaths of 2 people. His phone rang. Iris. Barry answered. Hey, did you see the news? Iris's voice was thick with emotion, like she'd been crying. Yeah, just now. It's terrible. I interviewed him, Barry. Oliver Queen. 6 months ago for a piece on young billionaires and philanthropy. He was actually nice. Funny. Said he wanted to make a difference with his money. She sniffled. And now he's just gone. I'm sorry. Barry meant it. Even knowing Oliver would eventually return didn't make the pain less real for Iris right now. My article about Queen Consolidated is going to run today. The timing feels awful. Like I'm profiting from tragedy. You wrote it before this happened. It's not exploitative. Still feels wrong. There was a long pause. Can I come over? I don't want to be alone right now. Barry hesitated. He had work to do. Research to process. Equipment deliveries to track. But Iris needed him. Needed support. And despite everything, despite the calculations and plans and moral compromises, he still cared about her. Still wanted to be there when she was hurting. Yeah, he said. Come over. I'll make breakfast. Thanks, Barry. I'll be there in 30 minutes. She hung up. Barry stood and went to his kitchen, pushing aside the laptop and research notes scattered across his dining table. Made space for something normal. Something human. Iris arrived at 7:38 a.m., eyes red from crying. Barry let her in and she immediately hugged him, burying her face in his chest. This feels stupid, she mumbled into his shirt. I barely knew him, but it just makes everything feel so fragile. It's not stupid. Barry held her, one hand rubbing her back gently. Death reminds us that things can change instantly. It's okay to be affected by that. Iris pulled back and looked up at him. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. Just observant. She smiled weakly. You're different lately. More present somehow. Like you're actually thinking about things instead of just going through motions. Because he was. Because he'd stopped being ordinary Barry Allen who processed evidence and hoped life would eventually improve. He'd become someone with purpose, direction, plans that extended years into the future. But he couldn't tell Iris that. So instead, he just smiled and said, maybe I'm finally growing up. About time. Iris wiped her eyes. You promised breakfast. They ate together at his small dining table. Scrambled eggs and toast. Nothing fancy. But it felt grounded. A moment of normal human connection in a life that was rapidly becoming anything but normal. Iris talked about her article. About how the editors wanted her to update it with information about the yacht disaster. How she wasn't sure she wanted to. How it felt like turning tragedy into content. Barry listened and offered thoughts when appropriate. His enhanced emotional intelligence let him read exactly what Iris needed. Not solutions. Just presence. Someone who cared and understood. After breakfast, they sat on his couch. Iris leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. They didn't talk much. Just sat there while morning news coverage played on his laptop, repeating the same information over and over. I should go, Iris finally said around 10 a.m. Let you get back to your mysterious project. It's not mysterious. Just boring tech stuff. Aha. She stood and grabbed her jacket. Thanks for this, Barry. For being here. Always. Iris paused at the door, looking back at him. Something shifted in her expression. A decision being made. She walked back over and kissed him. She kissed him. Not on the cheek this time. On the mouth. Soft but deliberate. A kiss that meant something. Barry responded instinctively, his hand coming up to cup her face. The kiss deepened for a moment. Heat building. Chemistry that had always been there finally getting acknowledged. Then Iris pulled back, breathless. I've wanted to do that for a while. Me too. But not right now. Not today. Today is too sad. She smiled. Saturday though. Our dinner date. That's still happening. Definitely still happening. Good. Iris kissed him once more, quick and light. Then she left, closing the door behind her. Barry stood in his apartment, touching his lips where Iris had kissed him. That had been real. Genuine. A moment of actual human connection that had nothing to do with plans or calculations or meta-knowledge. And it terrified him. Because Barry knew where this could lead. Knew that in the many timelines, he and Iris got married. Built a life together. Became each other's everything. But this timeline was different. Barry was different. He knew feel down he was undeniably lustful for more. Multiple relationships. A life that wouldn't fit into the traditional romance Iris probably imagined. Could he have both? Could he pursue his larger plans while still maintaining something real with Iris? His mind couldn't answer that. Some variables were too human to calculate. Barry shook his head and went back to his laptop. Checked his brokerage accounts. Queen Consolidated was now at $38.94, continuing its slide. His long positions were already underwater by about 4%, but that was expected. This was a 5-year play, not a day trade. He had $17,319 invested at an average price of $40.50 per share. If the stock recovered to even $30 over the next 5 years, he'd make significant money. And when Oliver Queen returned, it would spike even higher. Patient capital. That's what this was. Money he didn't need to touch for years. Barry opened a new spreadsheet and updated his financial projections. Current liquid capital, $35,681 after the equipment purchases. Current invested capital, $17,319 in Queen Consolidated stock. Patent royalties expected next month, approximately $6,000. Underground fighting income, $800 per fight, 1 fight per week average. He was building wealth slowly but steadily. Not getting rich overnight, but establishing multiple income streams that would compound over time. Good enough for now. Once the thinking cap was operational, his earning potential would multiply exponentially. Barry spent the rest of Friday processing the research photos from DeVos' lab. His enhanced mind absorbed every detail, building a complete mental model of how DeVos' prototype worked and where its weaknesses were. By evening, he had a refined design for his own version. Better targeting, adaptive frequency modulation, real-time neural health monitoring, safety cutoffs at every level. On paper, it would work. It would enhance cognitive function by at least 10x without causing neural degradation. Now he just needed to build it. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of obsessive work. Equipment arrived in stages. Barry picked it up from his storage unit and transported it piece by piece to his apartment. Electromagnetic field generators, EEG monitoring systems, signal processors. All of it spread across his living room floor like the world's most expensive science project. He worked 18-hour days, assembling components, writing control software, testing individual subsystems. His enhanced intellect made the work faster, but it was still complex. Building a device that could safely interface with human neural tissue wasn't something you rushed. Iris texted him regularly, but Barry kept the responses brief. He was buried in work. Didn't have time for extended conversations. Their dinner date got postponed once, then twice. Iris was understanding, but he could sense frustration building. Joe called on Wednesday of the second week. You quitting CCPD was sudden, Barry. Want to talk about what you're doing now? Independent research, Barry said, which was technically true. Tech development stuff. It's boring. Doesn't sound boring. Sounds like you're avoiding me. I'm not avoiding anyone. Just busy. Right. Joe didn't sound convinced. Well, when you're not busy, come by for dinner. It would be nice to gather together like before. I will. Soon. I promise. Barry hung up feeling slightly guilty. He was drawing a line between him and the people who cared about him. Isolating himself to an extent in pursuit of goals they couldn't understand. But it was necessary. At least for now. Once he had the thinking cap operational, once his intellect was truly superhuman, he could balance relationships better. Could manage multiple priorities simultaneously. Just a little longer. On Thursday of the second week, Barry completed the first prototype. The device sat on his dining table, a cobbled-together mess of wires and circuits and electromagnetic coils. It looked nothing like DeVos' elegant helmet design. More like something a mad scientist would build in a basement. But the theory was sound. The components were correct. The software was thoroughly tested. It should work. Should. Barry stared at the prototype for a long time, weighing risks. If he was wrong about the safety protocols, this thing could kill him. Brain hemorrhage, seizures, permanent neural damage. Or it could make him the smartest person on Earth. I need to test it first, he thought. Not on me. On something else. But what? He couldn't exactly test brain enhancement on lab rats. His apartment wasn't set up for animal testing, and buying rats would create a paper trail. No, if he was going to do this, he needed to do it carefully. Incrementally. Start with minimal power and work up gradually. Barry set up the EEG monitoring system, placing electrodes on his own scalp in the positions he'd marked from his research. Connected them to his laptop so he could track neural activity in real time. Then he put on the prototype. It was uncomfortable. The electromagnetic coils pressed against his skull at odd angles. The wiring draped down his back awkwardly. Professional this was not. Barry opened the control software on his laptop, set the initial power level to 5% of theoretical maximum, safety cutoffs armed at every stage, neural health monitoring active. His finger hovered over the activation button. This is it, he thought. Point of no return. He clicked activate. The device hummed softly against Barry's skull. At first, nothing happened. Just the gentle vibration of electromagnetic fields cycling through their patterns. Barry watched his laptop screen, monitoring the EEG readout. His brain waves looked normal. Alpha waves steady. No signs of distress. Then something shifted. It started small. A clarity in his thoughts that hadn't been there before. Like someone had wiped fog off a window he hadn't realized was dirty. Barry looked at the equations on his laptop screen and suddenly saw connections he'd missed. Patterns in the data that were obvious now but had been invisible moments ago. His enhanced intellect, already significantly above normal, began multiplying. The numbers on his research documents made perfect sense. Not just comprehensible but trivial. He could see 3 steps ahead in every calculation. Could predict outcomes before running the math. Barry's heart rate increased. The EEG monitor showed his neural activity spiking. Beta waves intensifying. Gamma oscillations increasing in frequency. But no pain. No headaches. No signs of the neural stress that had plagued DeVoe's experiments. It was working. Barry increased the power level to 10%. The hum grew slightly louder. The clarity sharpened further. Now he wasn't just seeing patterns. He was understanding fundamental principles. The theoretical physics underlying electromagnetic neural stimulation suddenly made complete sense. Every equation, every relationship, every implication. His mind raced through calculations, optimizations for the device design, improvements he could make, ways to increase efficiency by 40% just by adjusting the frequency modulation patterns. 15% power. The world became crystal clear. Barry looked at his research notes and saw them completely. Not just what he'd written but what he should have written. The gaps in his logic. The assumptions he'd made that weren't quite correct. All of it visible and correctable. He grabbed a notebook and started writing. His hand moved fast, filling pages with equations and diagrams. Improvements to the thinking cap design. Theoretical frameworks for the chamber he'd eventually build. Calculations about optimal ability integration during the particle accelerator explosion. Everything flowed. Every thought connected to every other thought in perfect logical chains. This was incredible. This was power on a level he'd only imagined. 20% power. Barry's perception of time seemed to slow. Not actually slowing, just his mind processing information so fast that everything else appeared sluggish by comparison. He could read an entire page in under 2 seconds and retain every word perfectly. Could solve complex differential equations in his head without needing paper. Could visualize 3-dimensional structures and rotate them mentally with perfect accuracy. The EEG monitor showed unusual patterns. Theta waves normally associated with deep meditation appearing alongside beta waves of intense focus. His brain was operating in multiple states simultaneously. But still no pain. No neural stress markers. The adaptive frequency modulation was working exactly as designed. Barry ran the device at 20% power for 30 minutes, testing his limits, pushing to see where problems would emerge. They didn't. His brain adapted smoothly. Neural pathways strengthened under the stimulation rather than deteriorating. The device was training his mind to function at higher levels naturally, exactly as he'd theorized. At the 30-minute mark, Barry powered down the device. The electromagnetic fields faded. The hum stopped. The enhanced clarity didn't disappear immediately. It faded gradually over the next 10 minutes, his mind returning to its baseline enhanced state. But even after it faded completely, Barry could feel the difference. His thoughts were faster than before, sharper, more organized. One session had made him genuinely smarter. Barry pulled off the prototype and checked the EEG data logs. His brain had responded perfectly to the stimulation. Neurogenesis markers were elevated, indicating new neural connections forming. Synaptic plasticity had increased. 0 signs of cellular damage or stress. Perfect results. Better than perfect. He'd done it. Built a thinking cap that actually worked without destroying the user. Barry sat back in his chair, mind racing with possibilities. With this device, he could accelerate his learning exponentially. Master any subject in days instead of years. Design the transformation chamber with superhuman precision. Build a tech empire that would surpass all before him. But he needed to be careful. The device worked at low power levels. That didn't mean higher levels were safe. He'd need to increase gradually. Test extensively. Make sure the adaptive enhancement remained stable. Over the next week, Barry followed a strict testing protocol. 1 session per day at gradually increasing power levels. 20%, 25%, 30%, 35%. Each session monitored carefully, each one showing the same positive results. His baseline intelligence increased steadily. Things that had required his enhanced concentration before became effortless. He read faster, calculated faster, made connections faster. By day 7, he was operating the device at 40% power for hour-long sessions. His intellect during those sessions was approximately 15x higher than normal human baseline. Not as high as DeVoe had eventually achieved, but more sustainable and without the catastrophic side effects. And his baseline was still improving. Neural plasticity was doing its job. Every session trained his brain to function better naturally. Barry began applying his enhanced intellect to practical problems. He designed 3 new patent applications during one session. Innovations in battery technology, data compression, and neural interface systems. All of them years ahead of current market solutions. He filed the patents under shell companies. Within days, he had interest from major tech firms wanting to license the technology. Money started flowing in. First royalty payment, $22,000. Second, $31,000. Third, $28,000. His bank account grew rapidly. $35,681 became $65,000. Then $94,000. Then $127,000. He was becoming wealthy. Not billionaire wealthy, not yet, but comfortable enough that money was no longer a limiting factor for his plans. Barry also continued his physical training. His enhanced intellect let him optimize workout routines perfectly. He calculated exact nutritional requirements for muscle growth, designed exercise programs that maximized strength gains while minimizing injury risk. His body transformed. Lean muscle replaced the softness that had defined him before. His movements became more controlled, more efficient. The underground fighting continued. Barry won 4 more fights over 3 weeks. Each victory was more dominant than the last. His opponents never stood a chance against someone who could calculate their movement patterns and exploit weaknesses with superhuman precision. He discovered something unsettling during those fights. He liked the violence, enjoyed the feeling of his fist connecting with someone's face, felt satisfaction when opponents crumpled under his strikes. That should have concerned him. The original Barry Allen wouldn't have enjoyed hurting people, but this version found it cathartic, necessary, a way to test himself against real danger. Another piece of humanity slipping away, or maybe just a piece that had always been there, finally getting acknowledged. Iris noticed the changes. They'd finally had their dinner date, rescheduled 3 times but eventually happening at the Italian restaurant Barry had chosen. Iris had been impressed. Good food, intimate atmosphere, Barry being attentive and present in a way he usually wasn't. The date ended with them making out in his car like teenagers. Heavy breathing, wandering hands, heat that would have gone further if Barry hadn't pulled back. Not yet, he'd said. I want to, but not in a car. You deserve better. Iris had looked at him with something between frustration and admiration. Since when are you this restrained? Since I started actually thinking about what I want instead of just reacting. They'd had 3 more dates after that, each one escalating physically, each one stopping just short of going all the way. Barry was playing a careful game, building attraction, maintaining interest, but not committing to something exclusive, because his plans still involved other women, multiple relationships that Iris wouldn't accept if he moved too fast now. Well, he was too damn greedy. He needed to be patient, let things develop naturally, keep Iris interested without letting her think they were in a committed relationship. His enhanced emotional intelligence made that navigation easier. He could read exactly what Iris needed, when to be present, when to create distance, how to be romantic without being smothering. Joe was more complicated. He'd called Barry in for a conversation 2 weeks after Barry quit CCPD. They'd met at Jitters, the coffee shop where Joe always went for his morning routine. You're different, kid, Joe had said, studying Barry over his coffee cup. And I can't figure out if it's good different or concerning different. I'm just focused on my work. What work? You won't tell me anything about what you're actually doing. Just vague mentions of tech projects and patents. That's not like you. The Barry I raised was transparent, honest. Barry had met Joe's eyes. The Barry you raised is still here. I'm just also trying to build something bigger than processing evidence in a crime lab. That's not wrong. Didn't say it was wrong. Just said it's different. Joe had leaned forward. Iris is worried about you too. Says you're pulling away sometimes. Getting distant. Iris and I are fine. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're keeping everyone at arm's length while you do whatever it is you're doing alone. That had hit closer to truth than Barry wanted to admit. But he couldn't explain the real reasons. Couldn't tell Joe about transmigration and meta-knowledge and plans that spanned years into the future. I'm not trying to push you away, Barry had said. I just need some space to figure things out. That's not abandonment. It's growth. Joe had studied him for a long moment. Finally nodded. Okay, but don't forget where you came from, Barry. Don't forget the people who care about you. Success means nothing if you're alone at the end. That conversation had stayed with Barry, echoing in his mind during quiet moments. Was he becoming too isolated? Too focused on his plans at the expense of real human connection? Even with his currently enhanced intellect, he couldn't answer that. Some questions were beyond calculation. 3 months after the Queen's Gambit sank, Barry received an invitation that changed everything. It arrived via email to his business account. Professional design. Central City Tech Innovation Conference logo at the top. Dear Mr. Allen, your recent patent applications in neural interface technology have attracted significant attention in the Central City Tech community. We would like to invite you to present your work at the upcoming Central City Tech Innovation Conference on November 15. The conference brings together leading innovators, researchers, and industry professionals. Star Labs will be the primary sponsor this year, and Dr. Harrison Wells has specifically requested the opportunity to meet with promising young inventors like yourself. Please confirm your attendance at your earliest convenience. Barry stared at that email for a long time. Harrison Wells wanted to meet him. Star Labs was involved. This was the connection point. The moment where the future could diverge even further from what he remembered. He analyzed the situation rapidly. Attending the conference meant exposure. People would see his face, know his name, connect him to his research. That created vulnerabilities. But it also created opportunities. Meeting Wells, Caitlin Snow, Cisco Ramon years before they were supposed to meet. Establishing relationships with the people who would eventually become Team Flash. Positioning himself perfectly for when the particle accelerator eventually exploded. The risk was enormous though. If Harrison Wells was somehow Eobard Thawne in disguise, despite this timeline supposedly being clean, then Barry would be walking directly into the speedster's awareness. But how would he know unless he went? Barry made the decision. He'd attend. He'd meet Wells. He'd assess whether this timeline was truly free of reverse flash interference or if something darker was lurking. He confirmed his attendance and spent the next 2 weeks preparing. November 15th arrived cold and clear. The Central City Tech Innovation Conference was held at the Marquee Hotel downtown. A massive venue with multiple conference halls and hundreds of attendees. Barry arrived at 9 a.m., dressed in a charcoal gray suit he'd bought specifically for this event. Professional. Polished. The kind of appearance that said serious innovator rather than 23-year-old kid playing at business. The main conference hall buzzed with activity. Booths displaying various technologies. Presentations happening on multiple stages. Networking groups clustered around coffee stations. Barry navigated through it all, his enhanced social intelligence reading the room perfectly. Who was important? Who was just trying to sell products? Who actually mattered in the Central City tech scene? He spotted Star Labs personnel easily. They wore matching lanyards with the distinctive Star Labs logo. 3 of them stood near a booth showcasing some kind of advanced materials research. 2 men and 1 woman. Barry recognized them immediately even though they looked younger than in his memories of the TV show. Cisco Ramon. Mid-20s, enthusiastic energy, wearing a t-shirt under a blazer. Exactly the kind of thing TV Cisco would have done. Caitlin Snow. Late 20s, professional attire, reserved expression. Beautiful in a subtle way that became more apparent the longer you looked at her. And Harrison Wells. Standing between them in a perfectly tailored suit, no wheelchair, walking normally, gesturing animatedly while explaining something technical. Not the Wells from the show. Not the one confined to a wheelchair after the accident that had supposedly crippled him. This Wells was physically fit. Active. Completely able-bodied. Because this timeline was different. No time travel accident. No Eobard Thawne stealing his body. Just the real Harrison Wells building Star Labs and pursuing his dreams of advancing human knowledge. Probably. Barry approached slowly, giving himself time to observe. Wells moved naturally. No hint of superspeed. No trace of the manic energy that Thawne had carried. His body language was open, friendly, genuinely excited about the technology they were discussing. He seemed real. Seemed like exactly what he was supposed to be. A brilliant physicist who wanted to change the world through science. But Barry couldn't be certain. Not yet. He needed to interact. Test. See if anything felt off. Excuse me, Barry said, stepping up to the booth. Dr. Wells? I'm Barry Allen. We corresponded about the conference. Wells turned and his face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. Mr. Allen? Excellent timing. I was just telling my team about your neural interface work. He extended his hand. Please, call me Harrison. Dr. Wells makes me feel old. Barry shook his hand, analyzing everything. The grip was firm but not crushing. Normal human strength. The skin was warm. Normal temperature. The eye contact was direct but not intimidating. Everything seemed normal. But Barry's instinct still tingled with uncertainty. Not quite suspicion. More like heightened awareness that something important was happening. This is Dr. Caitlin Snow, Wells continued, gesturing to the woman beside him. Our lead bioengineer. And Cisco Ramon, who handles mechanical engineering and has opinions about everything. Mostly correct opinions, Cisco interjected, shaking Barry's hand enthusiastically. Dude, seriously, your battery optimization patent? I tried to figure out how you achieved those efficiency gains and couldn't crack it. What's your secret? Lots of trial and error, Barry said, which was technically true even if he'd used a thinking cap to accelerate the process. And some unconventional approaches to energy distribution. Caitlin's handshake was cooler, more professional. Your background is in forensic science, correct? The transition to tech development is unusual. I got interested in how technology could improve evidence processing, Barry said smoothly. That led to broader research into optimization systems. One thing led to another. Natural evolution of interests, Wells said, nodding approvingly. That's exactly the kind of adaptive thinking we value at Star Labs. Too many researchers get locked into narrow specializations. The best innovations happen at the intersections of disciplines. They talked for 20 minutes. Wells asked intelligent questions about Barry's patents. Cisco geeked out about technical implementation details. Caitlin remained more reserved but clearly assessed Barry's credibility with every response he gave. Barry played it perfectly. Smart but not too smart. Knowledgeable but still learning. The kind of young inventor who showed promise but wasn't threatening to established figures. His enhanced emotional intelligence let him read the room flawlessly. Wells was genuinely impressed. Cisco was excited to meet someone near his own age doing cool work. Caitlin was skeptical but warming up as Barry demonstrated actual understanding of the science. "We're always looking for brilliant minds," Wells said eventually. "Star Labs is building something unprecedented here in Central City. A particle accelerator that will revolutionize our understanding of physics and energy production. The kind of project that requires the best people." Barry's heart rate increased slightly. There it was. The recruitment pitch. The invitation to join Star Labs years before the explosion. "That sounds incredible," Barry said carefully. "What's the timeline?" "Construction begins next year," Wells explained. "Completion estimated in 3 to 4 years. We're assembling the team now, getting the right people in place before the heavy work begins." 3 to 4 years. That matched what Barry remembered from the show. The particle accelerator would launch around 2016 or 2017. He had time. "I'm focused on my independent research right now," Barry said, "but I'd be interested in learning more. Maybe consulting on specific projects." Wells's eyes sharpened slightly. "Consulting could work. We have several initiatives where your neural interface expertise would be valuable, and it would give you a chance to see how we operate before making any long-term commitments." Perfect. A foot in the door without full commitment. Exactly what Barry wanted. "I'd like that," Barry said. "How do we proceed?" "Caitlin can set up an initial consultation," Wells said, gesturing to her. "Maybe next week? Tour the facility. Meet the rest of the team. See if there's a good fit." Caitlin pulled out a tablet and started scheduling. "Tuesday works for me. 2:00 p.m. "That works," Barry confirmed. They exchanged contact information, business cards and email addresses. Professional connections being established. As they talked, Barry's mind raced beneath the surface. He was doing it. Establishing himself with a possible future team Flash. Positioning perfectly for the particle accelerator explosion. Creating relationships that would matter when everything changed. But something still nagged at him. A feeling he couldn't quite identify. Not suspicion exactly. More like awareness that he was standing at a critical junction point where multiple futures branched off depending on choices he hadn't made yet. Wells seemed genuine. Seemed real. But Barry had meta-knowledge of a timeline where E.O. Birdthon had worn Wells's face for years without anyone suspecting. How could he be certain this wasn't happening again? "You seem troubled," Wells observed, his sharp eyes missing nothing. "Second thoughts about consulting?" Barry forced a smile. "Not at all. Just thinking about how to balance independent work with collaboration. I've gotten used to working alone." "Understandable. But isolation has limits." Wells's expression became more serious. "The greatest achievements in human history came from collaboration. Minds working together toward common goals. Don't let independence become imprisonment." That was eerily similar to what Joe had said weeks ago. Different words but the same message. Don't isolate yourself. Don't push everyone away. "I'll keep that in mind," Barry said. The conversation wound down naturally. Barry promised to stay in touch. Confirmed the Tuesday meeting with Caitlin. Shook hands all around. As he walked away from the Star Labs booth, his mind churned with calculations and uncertainties. He'd established the connection. Opened the door to Star Labs. Met Harrison Wells face to face. And he still couldn't tell if Wells was exactly what he seemed or something far more dangerous wearing a perfect disguise. Barry found a quiet corner of the conference hall and pulled out his phone. Opened a notes app and started writing. * Harrison Wells assessment *. Physical presentation * normal human appearance. No wheelchair. Full mobility. Matches pre-accident Wells from the original timeline. * Behavioral patterns * enthusiastic about science. Genuinely excited about talent. No traces of superspeed or manic energy associated with Thon. * Speech patterns * natural. No temporal references or speedster terminology. Talks like a scientist, not a time traveler. * Body language * open. Friendly. No defensive posturing or hidden tension. * Initial conclusion * appears to be genuine Harrison Wells. No evidence of E.O. Birdthon infiltration. However cannot be 100% certain. Need ongoing observation. Close monitoring of Star Labs activities. Any temporal anomalies or suspicious behavior would require immediate reassessment. Action plan * accept consulting position. Maintain professional distance. Gather intelligence while appearing cooperative. Verify everything. Barry saved the note and looked across the conference hall to where Wells still stood at the Star Labs booth, laughing at something Cisco had said. He looked like a good man. A brilliant scientist pursuing his dreams. Someone who wanted to make the world better through innovation and discovery. But Barry had learned that appearances could be deceiving. That the most dangerous threats often wore the most friendly faces. So he'd watch. He'd assess. He'd gather data and draw conclusions based on evidence rather than assumptions. And if Harrison Wells turned out to be E.O. Birdthon in disguise after all, Barry would be ready. Because that was the advantage of meta-knowledge combined with superhuman intelligence. He could see patterns others missed. Could detect inconsistencies that normal observation would never catch. The game was accelerating. The pieces were moving into position. Star Labs. Team Flash. The particle accelerator that would eventually explode and change everything. Barry Allen was inserting himself into the center of it all. Positioning perfectly for the transformation he'd been planning since the moment he'd transmigrated into this world. 4 years until the explosion. 4 years to build wealth, skills, and the perfect chamber that would grant him 7 abilities simultaneously. 4 years to become so thoroughly prepared that when lightning finally struck, it wouldn't create an ordinary speedster. Moreover, he could accelerate the whole thing instantly if he gets involved, but there were many things he was still calculating. Maybe he was overthinking, well he was, but still, he doesn't plan to be just a speedster. He would become something unprecedented. Something the DC universe had never seen before. Barry pocketed his phone and walked back into the conference, mind already planning his next moves. The future was being written. And for the first time since arriving in this world, Barry Allen wasn't just a passive observer of destiny. He was actively shaping it. Barry left the conference at 4:30 p.m., mind buzzing with possibilities. The meeting with Wells had gone better than expected. He'd made a strong impression. Established credibility. Opened the door to Star Labs without committing to anything that would limit his independence. Perfect execution. Exactly what he'd needed. His phone rang as he walked to his car. Unknown number. Barry answered cautiously. Hello, Mr. Allen? This is Christina Park from Tech Venture Capital. I attended your presentation at the conference today and I'd like to discuss potential investment opportunities in your research. Barry stopped walking. Investment opportunities. Venture capital. This was unexpected but potentially valuable. I'm listening, he said. Your neural interface work has significant commercial applications. We'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss series of funding. Potentially $2 to $5 million depending on your development roadmap. $2 to $5 million. Real money. The kind of capital that would let him accelerate everything. Build better equipment. Hire assistants. Expand his research without financial constraints. I'd be interested in hearing more, Barry said carefully. But I should mention I'm also in discussions with Star Labs about consulting opportunities. That's fine. We actually prefer our portfolio companies to have strategic partnerships with established research institutions. It validates the technology and provides networking opportunities. They scheduled a meeting for Thursday. Barry hung up feeling like the universe was aligning in his favor. Money. Connections. Opportunities multiplying faster than he'd planned. He got in his car and drove home, already calculating how to leverage this new development. Venture capital would mean giving up some equity in whatever company he formed. But it would also mean resources to accelerate his timeline dramatically. Worth considering carefully. When Barry arrived at his apartment, he found Iris waiting outside his door. She looked frustrated. You've been ignoring my texts, she said without preamble. Barry checked his phone. 3 messages from Iris over the past 4 hours. He'd been so focused on the conference he hadn't noticed. Sorry, I was at a tech conference. Phone was on silent. Right. The mysterious tech work you never want to talk about. Iris crossed her arms. Are we doing this or not, Barry? Doing what? Whatever this is between us. Because some days you're all in, attentive, present, making me feel like I matter. And other days you disappear into your work and I don't hear from you for days. I need to know where I stand. Barry understood her frustration immediately. Iris wanted commitment. Wanted to know they were building towards something serious. Wanted the relationship to be a priority. But Barry couldn't give her that. Not yet. Not when his heart did not desire a single commitment. Not when he knew getting too committed to Iris now would complicate everything later. He needed to navigate this carefully. Keep her interested without promising exclusivity. I care about you, Barry said, meeting her eyes. A lot. But I'm also trying to build something important with my work. Something that could change my entire future. That takes time and focus. I get that. I'm trying to build my journalism career too. But I still make time for people who matter to me. You're right. I should communicate better. Barry stepped closer, taking her hands. I'm not trying to push you away. I'm just learning how to balance everything. Give me some patience. Iris studied his face. Are you seeing other people? No, that was technically true. He wasn't seeing anyone else right now, but you want to keep things casual. This was the critical moment. How he answered would determine whether Iris stayed or walked away. I want to keep things honest, Barry said. I care about you. I want to spend time with you. But I'm also not ready to make promises about the future when I'm still figuring out my own life. Does that make sense? Iris's expression softened slightly. So we're friends who kiss and go on dates but no label. If that works for you. She was quiet for a long moment. Then nodded. Okay, but only if you actually communicate with me. I can handle casual. I can't handle being ignored. Deal. Barry pulled her close and kissed her. Slow and deep. Reminding her of the chemistry between them. Reinforcing the physical connection even as he avoided emotional commitment. Iris melted into the kiss. When they pulled apart, her frustration had transformed into something warmer. More accepting. You're infuriating, she said, but smiled. Want to come over? I made dinner and was hoping to share it with someone. Barry considered. He should work on his thinking cap improvements. Should prepare for the Star Labs meeting Tuesday. Should process everything from today's conference. But Iris was here, offering something human and grounded. And maybe he needed that. Maybe Joe and Wells were right that isolation had limits. Yeah, Barry said. I'd like that. They went to Iris's apartment. Ate pasta she'd made. Talked about her latest article and his conference presentation. Normal conversation between two people who genuinely liked each other. It felt good. Felt real in a way that his obsessive planning and preparation didn't. Later, they ended up on her couch. Kissing turned to more. Clothes came off. Barry made a decision and didn't pull back this time. They moved to her bedroom and things got physical and intense. Still, it was but a connection without promises. Afterward, lying in her bed, Barry stared at the ceiling while Iris curled against him. She fell asleep quickly, her breathing steady and peaceful. But Barry's mind wouldn't stop. He'd crossed a line tonight. Made the relationship physical. That would deepen Iris's emotional investment even as he maintained distance. Was that fair? Was he manipulating her? Using her for physical and emotional comfort while knowing his long-term plans didn't include traditional commitment? His couldn't answer that. Morality wasn't mathematical. Human relationships didn't follow clean equations. He was in uncharted territory. Becoming someone different from the original Barry Allen. Someone willing to make compromises the original never would have. Is this who I want to be? He thought. Someone who plans multiple relationships while letting Iris believe there's potential for more. But then another thought followed. The original Barry Allen would have stumbled through life, reactive and uncertain. This version is building something unprecedented. Maybe some compromise is necessary for that. Barry closed his eyes, pushing the guilt aside. He'd deal with the moral implications later. Right now, he had plans to execute, goals to achieve, a future to build. Everything else was secondary, even if that made him something less than heroic. Tuesday arrived faster than Barry expected. He showed up at Star Labs at 1:55 p.m., 5 minutes early. The facility was impressive. Modern architecture, state-of-the-art security, the kind of place where serious science happened. Caitlin met him in the lobby, right on time. I appreciate punctuality. Professional habit, Barry said, following her through security checkpoints. She led him on a tour of the facility, research labs, engineering spaces, the massive construction site where the particle accelerator would eventually be built. All of it cutting-edge and expensive. Wells met them in his office. Large space, windows overlooking the city, walls covered with whiteboards full of equations and diagrams. Mr. Allen, Wells greeted warmly. Welcome to Star Labs. What do you think so far? Impressive. You're building something significant here. We're trying to. Wells gestured to chairs. Caitlin mentioned your neural interface work. I'd like to understand it better. Where do you see the technology going? Barry explained his research carefully. Enough detail to demonstrate expertise but not so much that he revealed the thinking cap's true capabilities. He talked about neural monitoring systems, brain-computer interfaces, potential medical applications for treating cognitive disorders. Wells listened intently, occasionally asking sharp questions that tested Barry's understanding. Caitlin took notes, her analytical mind clearly evaluating every response. After an hour of technical discussion, Wells leaned back in his chair. You're the real deal, Mr. Allen. Not just clever, genuinely brilliant. How old are you? 23. Exceptional for your age. Wells exchanged a glance with Caitlin. I'd like to make you an offer. Consulting position as discussed. 20 hours per week. $150 per hour. Work on projects related to neural monitoring for our particle accelerator safety systems. $3,000 per week. $12,000 per month. On top of his patent royalties and other income streams. Barry calculated rapidly. The money was good but the real value was positioning. Being inside Star Labs. Having legitimate access to their research and equipment. Knowing exactly when the particle accelerator would launch. I'd need to maintain my independent research, Barry said. No non-compete clauses or IP restrictions. Agreed. We're not trying to own you. Just benefit from your expertise on specific projects. Then I accept. They shook hands. Barry officially became a Star Labs consultant. Part of the team that would eventually create the explosion that changed everything. Caitlin walked him out after the meeting concluded. At the exit, she paused. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. Why neural interfaces? Most people your age in tech are chasing apps or social media platforms. You're working on brain-computer systems. That's unusual. Barry considered his answer. Because understanding the brain is fundamental. Everything else is just applications built on top of our neural architecture. If you can enhance cognition directly, you enhance everything humans can achieve. Caitlin studied him. That's either brilliant or slightly terrifying. Why not both? She smiled for the first time since they'd met. You might fit in here better than I expected. Welcome to Star Labs, Barry. He drove home with a sense of achievement. Everything was coming together. Money, connections, position inside the organization that would create metahumans. His apartment felt small when he returned, cluttered with equipment and research notes. The thinking cap prototype sat on his dining table, still functional but primitive compared to what he could build now with better resources. Barry's phone buzzed. Text from the venture capital firm. They wanted to move forward with funding discussions. Preliminary term sheet attached. He opened the attachment and read through it. $3 million Series A investment. 20% equity stake. Board seat for the lead investor. Standard terms for early-stage funding. Life-changing money. But also giving up a piece of his company. Barry's enhanced intellect analyzed the trade-offs. The funding would let him build a professional lab, hire assistants, accelerate development by years. But it would also mean oversight. Investors who wanted returns. Pressure to commercialize rather than focus on pure research. Worth it? Maybe. Probably. He'd need to negotiate better terms, but the fundamental opportunity was solid. Another text arrived. This one from Iris. Last night was amazing. Coffee tomorrow before work. Barry smiled. Iris was keeping it casual. No pressure. No demands for immediate answers about where things were going. Sounds good. Java Junction at 8. Perfect. Simple. Easy. Exactly what Barry needed right now. He set the phone down and returned to analyzing the venture capital term sheet. $3 million would change everything. Professional lab space. Better equipment. Resources to accelerate his timeline significantly. His enhanced mind calculated the trade-offs. 20% equity was reasonable for series of funding. The board seat meant oversight but also legitimacy. Investors who could open doors and make introductions. Worth it. Definitely worth it. Barry drafted a response accepting the preliminary terms with minor modifications. Sent it off and leaned back in his chair, processing everything that had happened today. Star Labs consultant. Venture capital funding incoming. Relationship with Iris moving forward without complications. Harrison Wells assessed and seeming genuine. Everything was accelerating faster than he'd planned. But in good ways. Productive ways. His phone buzzed one more time. Text from Joe. Iris told me you two are spending time together. Just want you to know I'm glad. You're good for each other. Dinner this Sunday. Barry stared at that message, surprised. Joe was giving his blessing. Not interfering. Not making it complicated. He typed back, Sunday works. Thanks Joe. Anytime, kid. Proud of what you're building. Barry set the phone down with a strange feeling in his chest. Things were working out. People were supporting him. Relationships were developing naturally without forcing drama or conflict. Maybe he'd been overthinking the complications. Maybe it was possible to pursue his plans while still maintaining real connections with the people who mattered. Time would tell. But for now, everything felt manageable. Barry returned to his research, mind already planning the next phases. The thinking cap needed iteration. The chamber design required more theoretical work. His Star Labs consulting would start next week and he needed to prepare. 4 years until the particle accelerator explosion. 4 years to position himself perfectly. And every piece was falling into place exactly as it should. Barry sat in his apartment at 2:47 a.m., the thinking cap humming at 65% power. His mind operated at levels that would terrify normal humans. Thoughts cascaded through neural pathways at impossible speeds. Complex problems solved themselves before he'd even finished formulating them. The world had become transparent. Predictable. A series of variables waiting to be optimized. He'd been working for 19 hours straight. Not tired. Not hungry. His enhanced physiology combined with the thinking cap's stimulation had pushed him beyond normal human limitations. On his laptop screen, lines of code scrolled rapidly. An artificial intelligence. Not simple machine learning or pattern recognition. True artificial intelligence with adaptive learning capabilities and natural language processing that made current market solutions look primitive. Barry had started building it 3 days ago. Now it was nearly complete. The AI would handle tasks his enhanced mind found tedious. Data analysis. Market research. Financial optimization. Security monitoring. All the background work that consumed time he could spend on more important problems. He'd already decided on a name. Gideon. From the comics and TV show, the AI that E.O. Birdthon had used. But this version would be Barry's from the start. Built by him. Loyal only to him. Without any temporal complications or hidden reverse flash programming. Barry's fingers moved across the keyboard with inhuman precision. Final integration protocols. Security systems to prevent unauthorized access. Ethical constraints to prevent the AI from developing dangerous autonomy. At 3:12 a.m., the code compilation completed. Gideon came online. A synthesized voice emerged from his laptop speakers. Female. Professional. Calm. Systems initialized. Running diagnostic protocols. All subsystems operational. Awaiting designation of primary user. Primary user, Barry Allen, Barry said. Voice print authorization required for all command-level functions. Acknowledged. Voice print recorded and encrypted. Hello, Barry. I am Gideon. How may I assist you? Barry leaned back in his chair, a smile spreading across his face. Start with analysis of current global tech markets. Identify emerging sectors with high growth potential and low current competition. Prioritize technologies I could develop and patent within 6 months. Processing. 3 seconds passed. Analysis complete. 17 high potential sectors identified. Top 3 recommendations: quantum encryption protocols, advanced energy storage systems, and distributed computing architectures for edge processing. Would you like detailed breakdowns? Energy storage first. Gideon displayed comprehensive market analysis on his screen. Current battery technology limitations. Emerging research directions. Patent landscapes showing where opportunities existed. Projected market sizes over the next decade. Barry absorbed it all in seconds. His enhanced mind saw the gaps immediately. Current lithium-ion technology had fundamental limitations. Solid-state batteries were promising but faced manufacturing challenges. What the market needed was a completely new approach. And Barry could design one. His meta-knowledge from his previous life included awareness of battery breakthroughs that hadn't happened yet in this timeline. Graphene-based supercapacitors. Silicon anode technologies. Electrolyte innovations that improved energy density by orders of magnitude. He didn't need to invent the technologies from scratch, just accelerate their development by applying his superhuman intellect to problems that would take normal researchers years to solve. Gideon, I need you to file provisional patents. I'm going to design a new energy storage system. Multiple innovations covering materials, architectures, and manufacturing processes. I want comprehensive IP protection before we move to commercialization. Understood. I can prepare and file provisional patent applications automatically once you provide technical specifications. Estimated filing time, 4 hours per patent including USPTO formatting and submission protocols. Perfect. Barry started designing. Read more chapters, 21 plus days ahead of web novel updates, on Patreon Marvel Stark. Comment. 6 comment. Vote. Chapter 31, New Company, Iris Acceptance. The thinking cap at 65% power made the work trivial. He saw molecular structures in his mind with perfect clarity. Understood electron flow and energy transfer mechanisms intuitively. Calculated performance characteristics before building physical prototypes. By 6 a.m., he'd designed 17 distinct innovations in battery technology. Each one patentable. Each one commercially viable. Together, they represented a complete revolution in energy storage. Gideon filed the provisional patents automatically. Barry would have a year to develop full applications. More than enough time. But he needed to think bigger. Patents were valuable but limited. Real wealth came from building companies around the technologies. Creating products. Dominating markets. The neural interface patents he'd been filing were dangerous. Too close to DeVoe's work. Too likely to accelerate the thinker's emergence if other researchers built on Barry's published innovations. He needed to pivot away from that field entirely. Gideon, update my research focus. All neural interface work gets reclassified as medical technology only. No consumer applications. No cognitive enhancement. Strictly therapeutic uses for treating disorders. Acknowledged. Updating patent classifications and future research directions. That would slow down the field. Keep DeVoe's timeline on track without Barry accidentally creating the thinking cap arms race that could lead to earlier metahuman emergence. Barry powered down the thinking cap at 6:23 a.m. The enhanced clarity faded gradually over the next 15 minutes, but his baseline remained elevated. Each session trained his brain to function better naturally. He was getting genuinely smarter even without the device. He stood and stretched, body stiff from hours of sitting. Looked around his apartment. Equipment and research notes everywhere. The space felt cramped. Inadequate for what he was building. He needed a proper facility. Lab space. Office space. Manufacturing capabilities. A real company with infrastructure and employees. The venture capital money would arrive next week. $3 million for the neural interface company. But that wasn't enough. That company would focus on medical applications. Safe. Controlled. Nothing that would disrupt timelines. Barry needed a second company. One he controlled completely. No investors. No board seats. Just his vision executed with perfect precision. And the battery technology was perfect for that. The market was massive. Billions of dollars. Every device on Earth needed batteries. Electric vehicles. Consumer electronics. Grid storage. Military applications. Revolutionary battery technology would make Barry a billionaire within years. His phone buzzed. Text from Iris. Morning? Still on for coffee at 8. Barry checked the time. 6:31 a.m. He had 90 minutes. Yeah, see you there. He showered quickly and changed clothes. His reflection in the bathroom mirror showed someone transformed. Leaner. More muscular. Eyes sharper and more focused. The physical changes from months of optimized training were obvious. Barry grabbed his laptop and headed out. Stopped at Java Junction at 7:53 a.m. Ordered coffee and claimed a corner table. Iris arrived at exactly 8 a.m. She looked good. Professional outfit. Hairstyled. Confident in a way she hadn't been months ago when her journalism career was struggling. Hey. She sat down across from him, smiling. You look tired. Worked late. New project. The mysterious tech stuff you never explain. Iris sipped her coffee. I'm starting to think you're secretly a supervillain building doomsday devices. Barry laughed. Just boring energy storage research. Very unsexy. Everything about you lately is unsexy then. Because you're always working. But she said it teasingly. No accusation. No pressure. They talked for 40 minutes. Iris had landed a major assignment. Investigative piece on Central City's infrastructure problems. Real journalism instead of puff pieces. She was excited. Energized. Barry listened and asked good questions. His enhanced emotional intelligence let him engage genuinely even while his mind processed other problems in the background. I should get to work, Iris finally said, checking her phone. Thanks for making time. I know you're busy. Always have time for you. She smiled and leaned across the table to kiss him. Quick but warm. Then she left, disappearing into the morning crowd on the sidewalk outside. Barry sat alone for a few more minutes, finishing his coffee. Processing. Planning. His relationship with Iris was stable. Uncomplicated. She'd accepted the casual nature of their connection without demanding more. That gave him freedom to pursue his larger plans without emotional complications. Good. One less variable to manage. Barry opened his laptop and pulled up financial projections Gideon had prepared overnight. The battery company would need seed funding, not venture capital. His own money. Bootstrap it until the technology was proven, then scale rapidly. Current available capital, $127,000 in liquid assets plus $17,319 in Queen consolidated stock. Not enough to build a manufacturing facility but enough to build working prototypes and secure initial contracts. He'd need to move fast though. File the full patents. Build demonstration units. Line up early customers willing to pay premium prices for revolutionary technology. 18 months. That's how long it would take to go from concept to market-ready product if everything went perfectly. Barry's enhanced mind calculated the timeline. 18 months would put him at mid-2015, a year before the particle accelerator explosion. Perfect timing to have a thriving company generating massive revenue right when he needed maximum resources for the chamber construction. He closed his laptop and headed home. Time to start building. 6 weeks later, Barry sat in a small office space he'd rented in the industrial district. The space was basic. Concrete floors, high ceilings, good ventilation for equipment that generated heat. Cheap rent because the neighborhood was rough. But it was his. Completely. No investors. No partners. No one questioning his decisions. The battery prototypes lined a workbench against one wall. Cylindrical cells about the size of AA batteries. They didn't look special. Just metal casings with connection terminals. But the performance was revolutionary. Energy density, 847 watt-hours per kilogram. Current lithium-ion technology maxed out around 250. Barry's design was more than 3 times better. Charge time, full charge in 12 minutes. Current technology needed hours. Cycle life, 50,000 plus charge cycles before degradation. Current technology failed after 500,000 cycles. The numbers were so good they seemed impossible. But Barry had tested them extensively. The technology worked. The physics were sound. The manufacturing process was viable at scale. He just needed someone to believe him. Gideon's voice came through his laptop speakers. Barry, incoming call from Tesla Energy Solutions. Third follow-up this week. Shall I connect? Put them through. A male voice came through his headset. Mr. Allen, this is David Charles, Senior Procurement Manager at Tesla. We've reviewed your technical specifications and honestly, they seem too good to be true. Our engineering team is skeptical. Skepticism is reasonable, Barry said calmly. That's why I'm offering demonstration units for independent testing. Send me a testing protocol and I'll provide samples. We'd want to test at our facilities. Under our conditions. That's fine. I'll ship 6 units tomorrow. Run whatever tests you want. Destructive testing. Long-term cycling. Thermal stress. Everything. There was a pause. You're that confident. The physics works. Your tests will prove it. All right. We'll send a purchase order for the test units. But Mr. Allen, if these perform as specified, we'd want to discuss exclusive licensing arrangements. Barry smiled. Let's see the test results first. Then we'll talk about arrangements. He hung up feeling satisfaction. Tesla was the 3rd major company requesting test samples. Ford had been first. Samsung second. All of them skeptical but intrigued. The test results would eliminate skepticism. Then the orders would flood in. Barry's phone rang again. This time Caitlin Snow from Star Labs. Barry, we need your input on the neural monitoring system designs. Can you come in tomorrow? Morning or afternoon? Morning works better. 9 a.m. I'll be there. Barry hung up and checked his schedule. Star Labs Consulting. Underground fight Thursday evening. Thinking cap session tonight to work on chamber design improvements. Dinner with Iris Friday night. Busy but manageable. Everything balanced. His laptop chimed with a notification. Email from the patent office. 6 of his battery patents had been approved. Full utility patents, not just provisionals. Enforceable IP protection on core technologies. Perfect timing. The test samples would prove commercial viability. The patents protected the innovations. Everything was positioning for massive growth. Gideon's voice interrupted his thoughts. Barry, analysis complete on the chamber integration protocols you requested. I've identified 47 potential failure points in your current design. Would you like me to present solutions? Display them? His screen filled with technical diagrams. The chamber that would grant him 7 abilities simultaneously during the particle accelerator explosion. Barry had been designing it incrementally over months. But even with his enhanced intellect, the complexity was staggering. 7 different metahuman abilities. 7 different mechanisms of power acquisition. All of them needing to integrate perfectly with the speed force during a single transformation event. The margin for error was essentially 0. If any component failed, Barry would either die or gain powers incorrectly, potentially crippling himself. Gideon's analysis highlighted weaknesses Barry hadn't noticed. Power distribution issues. Timing synchronization problems. Biofeedback loops that could create cascade failures. All fixable, but requiring more refinement. Gideon, start simulation runs. Model the transformation sequence 10,000 times with random variables. Identify any scenarios where catastrophic failure occurs. Processing. Estimated completion time, 43 hours. Good. Thoroughness mattered more than speed when the stakes were this high. Barry stood and walked to the window. Looked out at Central City. Ordinary people living ordinary lives. none of them knowing that in less than 3 years, a particle accelerator explosion would create metahumans and change everything. And Barry Allen would be at the center of it. Not by accident, not by chance, by design, by preparation, by becoming so thoroughly optimized that when destiny arrived, he'd be ready to shape it rather than be shaped by it. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Mr. Allen, this is Harrison Wells. I hope it's not inappropriate to contact you directly. I wanted to discuss an opportunity outside your official consulting role. Would you have time for lunch this week? Barry stared at that message. Wells reaching out personally for an opportunity he didn't want to discuss through official channels. Interesting. Potentially valuable. Potentially dangerous if Wells was somehow Thawne in disguise. Barry typed back, Wednesday works. Noon. Perfect. I'll send you the restaurant address. Looking forward to our conversation. Barry pocketed his phone, mind analyzing possibilities. What would Wells want to discuss privately? More consulting work? A full-time position? Something related to the particle accelerator? No way to know until the meeting. But Barry would go prepared. Gideon would compile everything publicly available about Wells. Barry would use the thinking cap beforehand to maximize his analytical capabilities. If Wells was Thawne, Barry would detect it. His superhuman intellect combined with meta-knowledge of how Thawne operated gave him advantages the TV shows Barry had never possessed. And if Wells was genuine, then this lunch might open doors Barry hadn't even considered yet. Either way, the game was accelerating. The pieces were moving, and Barry Allen was positioned perfectly at the center of everything that mattered. He returned to his workbench and picked up one of the battery prototypes. So small, so ordinary looking, but containing technology that would generate billions of dollars in revenue. This was just the beginning. Energy storage was the foundation. Once established, Barry could expand into other markets, other technologies, build an empire that would make Wayne Enterprises and Queen Consolidated look small. A few more years until the particle accelerator exploded and transformed him into something unprecedented. But Barry Allen was done waiting for destiny. He was creating it. One innovation at a time. One carefully calculated step at a time. The future belonged to those who prepared for it. And nobody in this timeline was more prepared than him. Barry set down the battery and got back to work. There was still so much to build. So much to perfect. So much to achieve before lightning finally struck. And he'd be ready. Completely. Totally. Absolutely ready. Because failure wasn't an option. Success was the only acceptable outcome. And Barry Allen had become someone who didn't accept anything less than perfection. The world just didn't know it yet. Wednesday morning arrived with unseasonably warm weather. Barry woke at 5:47 a.m. without an alarm. His body had adapted to consistent early schedules. Sleep optimization calculated by Gideon and implemented through adjusted routines. 6 hours of rest now provided what 8 used to. He lay in bed for 3 minutes, mind already processing the day's priorities. Lunch with Harrison Wells at noon. Critical meeting. Potential revelation about Wells's true nature. Barry needed to be at maximum analytical capability, which meant a thinking cap session beforehand. Barry stood and walked to his workstation. The latest iteration of the cap sat on a custom stand version 4.0, sleeker than the prototype. Better materials. Improved electromagnetic coil positioning. Power efficiency increased by 34%. He could now operate at 75% power for 2-hour sessions without adverse effects. His baseline intellect had increased so much that even without the device, he functioned at approximately 8x normal human cognitive levels. With the cap, over 100x during active sessions. Barry placed the device on his head and activated it at 70% power. Conservative for a morning session. Just enough to sharpen his mind to the necessary edge. The world crystallized into perfect clarity. His apartment became a collection of calculable variables. Light refraction patterns through the windows. Air circulation from the heating system. Microvibrations from traffic outside translated into distance and vehicle type estimations. Everything was data. Everything was understandable. Gideon, display all compiled information on Harrison Wells. His laptop screen filled with documents. Gideon had been gathering data for 3 days. Public records. Published research. News articles. Social media activity. Employment history. Financial records that were technically private but accessible through creative database queries. Barry absorbed it all in 90 seconds. His enhanced mind cataloged every detail. Cross-referenced everything against his meta-knowledge of the TV show timeline. Harrison Wells, profile summary. Born March 19, 1972 in Starling City. Parents both professors at Starling City University. Showed exceptional aptitude for physics and mathematics from early age. Full scholarship to MIT at 16. PhD in theoretical physics by 23. Published groundbreaking papers on tachyon particles and dimensional theory by 25. Founded Star Labs at 28 with venture capital backing and personal inheritance. Grew the company into a premier research institution over 15 years. Married to Tess Morgan, neurologist. No children. Wife died in car accident in 2000. Wells became more reclusive afterward but maintained Star Labs leadership. Current focus, particle accelerator construction. Stated goal of advancing human understanding of fundamental physics and creating clean energy solutions. Public perception, brilliant but eccentric. Known for taking risks other scientists avoided. occasionally controversial in his approaches but consistently producing results. Financial situation, wealthy but not billionaire level. Most assets tied up in Star Labs. Lives modestly despite resources. Drives a 10-year-old car. Small house in the suburbs. All of it consistent with what Barry expected. Nothing obviously wrong. Nothing that screamed time-traveling supervillain wearing a stolen face. But Barry's enhanced mind noticed subtleties. Micro-patterns in the data that normal analysis would miss. Wells's published research showed interest in dimensional theory going back decades. Papers about parallel universes and alternate timelines. Theoretical frameworks for interdimensional travel. Nothing conclusive but consistent curiosity about the multiverse. His wife's death in 2000. Car accident on a rural road. No witnesses. Police reports said brake failure. But the timing was convenient. Wells became more focused after her death. More driven. Like a man with a singular purpose replacing the distraction of personal life. And there were gaps. Small ones. Periods where Wells's whereabouts were unaccounted for. Days or weeks where no records existed of his location or activities. Most people had gaps like that. But combined with everything else, they formed a pattern. Not proof. Not even strong evidence. Just enough irregularity to trigger Barry's enhanced analytical instincts. Something isn't quite right, Barry thought. Not necessarily wrong. Just not completely standard. He ran probability calculations. Likelihood that Wells was Eobard Thawne, 8.7%. Low but not zero. Likelihood that Wells was exactly what he appeared to be, 73.2%. High but not certain. Likelihood that Wells had some secret that didn't involve being reverse flash, 18.1%. The numbers didn't give a clear answer, which meant Barry needed more data. Direct observation. Behavioral analysis. Checking for micro-expressions and speech patterns that indicated deception. Today's lunch would provide that opportunity. Gideon, prepare behavioral analysis protocols. I want you monitoring my phone's microphone during lunch. Real-time analysis of Wells's voice patterns. Stress indicators. Deception markers. Anything unusual. Acknowledged. Analysis protocols ready. I'll need uninterrupted audio feed for optimal results. You'll have it. Barry powered down the thinking cap at 7:03 a.m. He had 5 hours until lunch. Enough time to handle other priorities. His phone showed 3 missed calls from Tesla Energy Solutions. Barry called back immediately. David answered on the first ring. Mr. Allen, we need to talk. The test results came back. Barry's enhanced hearing detected excitement in his voice. Not skepticism. Not disappointment. But excitement. And Barry kept his tone neutral. Your batteries performed exactly as specified. Better actually. We ran every destructive test we could think of. Thermal cycling. Overcharge scenarios. Physical puncture tests. They exceeded every metric. Chen paused. This technology is legitimate. We want to discuss commercial arrangements immediately. What kind of arrangements? Licensing agreement. Exclusive supply contract. Whatever structure works. But we need this technology. Every electric vehicle manufacturer in the world needs this technology. Barry smiled. I'm not interested in exclusive arrangements. The technology is too important to limit to one customer. But I'm open to volume purchase agreements with favorable pricing for early adoption. How early can you scale production? 6 months for initial production runs. 18 months for full-scale manufacturing. We'll send a purchase order for initial quantities. 500,000 units. Delivery in 6 months. Barry did the math instantly. 500,000 units at the pricing tier he'd calculated. Approximately $87 million in revenue. From one customer. One order. I'll review the purchase order when it arrives, Barry said calmly, despite the massive number. But preliminary agreement pending final terms. Understood. You'll have it by end of day. Barry hung up and sat down slowly. $87 million. One deal. One customer. And Tesla was just the beginning. Ford had requested samples. Samsung was testing units. A dozen other companies were in preliminary discussions. If every negotiation went this well, Barry's company would generate $500 million in revenue within 2 years. Possibly more. Unicorn status wasn't years away. It was months away. The battery technology was so revolutionary that market adoption would be explosive. Barry's phone rang again. This time an unknown number. Mr. Allen, this is Catherine from Forbes magazine. I'm writing a piece on emerging tech entrepreneurs. Your battery company has been generating significant industry buzz. Would you be willing to interview? Forbes. Major media attention. Exactly what he needed for credibility and market positioning. I'd be interested, Barry said. What's your timeline? Article runs in 3 weeks. Phone interview works. 30 minutes of your time. They scheduled it for Monday. Barry hung up feeling the momentum building. Everything was accelerating faster than even his enhanced projections had predicted. His laptop chimed. Email from the patent office. Another 12 patents approved. These covering manufacturing processes and battery management systems. Comprehensive IP protection across the entire technology stack. Competitors couldn't replicate his designs without licensing. Barry controlled the entire supply chain from material science to finished products. Perfect market position. Perfect timing. Gideon, update financial projections based on Tesla purchase order and current market interest. Processing. 5 seconds passed. Revised projections, $470 million revenue by end of 2015, $1.2 billion by end of 2016. Conservative estimates assuming 60% conversion rate on current prospective customers. Nearly $1.5 billion in revenue within 2 years. That would make Barry's company one of the fastest growing tech startups in history, and he controlled 100% of it. No investors, no board, no dilution of ownership. When the company eventually went public or got acquired, Barry would become a billionaire overnight. He closed the laptop and checked the time. 8:17 a.m. Still hours before lunch with Wells. Barry changed into workout clothes and headed to the gym. His training had evolved beyond the underground fighting circuit. Those matches were useful for testing himself against real violence, but they didn't provide the systematic skill development he needed. Barry had started training with 3 different specialists. A Krav Maga instructor for practical combat, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt for grappling, a boxing coach for refined striking technique. Each of them had commented on his unnatural learning speed. Techniques that took normal students months to develop clicked for Barry in days. His enhanced mind processed movements perfectly, built muscle memory through optimized repetition. He was becoming legitimately dangerous. Not Batman level yet. He'd need years for that, but competent enough to handle himself in serious situations. The morning training session lasted 90 minutes. Drilling combinations, rolling with the BJJ instructor, sparring controlled rounds with the boxing coach. By 10:30 a.m., Barry was back at his apartment, showered, changed into professional clothes, navy suit, white shirt, no tie, the kind of outfit that said successful but not pretentious. He checked his reflection. The physical transformation was obvious. Lean muscle, sharp features, eyes that reflected the intelligence burning behind them. He looked like someone who'd accomplished things. Someone who mattered. Good. That's exactly the image he needed to project. At 11:47 a.m., Barry left his apartment and drove to the restaurant Wells had specified. Upscale Italian place downtown. White tablecloths. Expensive wine list. The kind of venue where serious business discussions happened. Barry arrived at 11:54 a.m., 6 minutes early. Deliberate. He wanted to observe Wells entering. Watch his body language. Look for tells. He claimed a table with good sight lines and ordered water. Activated his phone's voice recorder discreetly. Gideon would analyze everything from this conversation. Harrison Wells arrived at exactly noon. Punctual. He wore a casual blazer over a button-down shirt. No tie. Relaxed professional. His eyes scanned the restaurant until they found Barry. Wells smiled and walked over. Barry, thank you for making time. I know you're busy. They shook hands. Barry's enhanced perception noted everything. Firm grip. Warm skin temperature. Normal human contact. Confident posture. Open body language. Nothing overtly suspicious. Happy to meet, Barry said. Your message suggested something outside official consulting business. Indeed. Wells sat down across from him. I'll be direct. I've been following your work beyond what you do for Star Labs. The battery technology. The patents. The growing business interest. You're building something impressive. Barry waited. Let Wells continue without prompting. I wanted to ask if you'd considered what comes after, Wells said. After the initial success. After the money starts flowing. What's your ultimate goal? Interesting question. Testing Barry's ambitions. Assessing whether he thought small or large. Changing the world, Barry said simply. Energy storage is the foundation. But there are other problems. Other technologies that could advance humanity. I want to build solutions for all of them. Wells's eyes brightened. That's what I hoped you'd say. Most entrepreneurs think in terms of exits and acquisitions. You think in terms of impact. Money is useful, but it's a tool, not a goal. Exactly. Wells leaned forward slightly. Barry, I'm going to share something that stays between us. Star Labs is building more than just a particle accelerator. We're building a platform for breakthrough research across multiple fields. Clean energy, advanced materials, biotechnology, everything interconnected. Barry listened carefully. This was rehearsed. Wells had prepared this pitch, which meant he wanted something specific. The particle accelerator is the centerpiece, Wells continued. But the real vision is creating an ecosystem where brilliant minds can pursue ambitious projects without traditional constraints. Funding, resources, collaboration, all available to people who think beyond conventional limitations. That's ambitious, Barry said neutrally. It requires ambitious people. Wells met his eyes directly. I want you to be part of that ecosystem, not just as a consultant, as a partner, someone with skin in the game. There it was, the real ask. Wells wanted Barry deeply integrated with Star Labs, not just peripherally involved. What would partnership look like? Barry asked. Equity stake in Star Labs, position on the leadership team, access to all research facilities and equipment, freedom to pursue your own projects while contributing to ours. Wells paused. In exchange, Star Labs gets first access to your innovations, not exclusive rights, just first opportunity to license or collaborate. Barry analyzed the offer instantly. Equity in Star Labs was potentially valuable but also created obligations. Leadership position meant time commitment. First access to innovations could limit his flexibility. Downsides existed, but so did upsides. Resources, connections, Proximity to the particle accelerator when it eventually exploded. I'll need some time to come to a decision. Can you wait? Barry asked. Of course. This isn't a decision to rush. Wells smiled. But I want you to know the offer is genuine. I see something special in you, Barry. A mind that operates on a different level. That's rare. I'd like to help you achieve your full potential. They ordered lunch. The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Star Labs research projects. Barry's consulting work. General discussion about Central City's growing tech sector. Barry maintained perfect social calibration. Engaged but not overeager. Interested but not committed. His enhanced emotional intelligence let him navigate the dynamics flawlessly. Throughout lunch, he observed Wells continuously. Micro-expressions, speech patterns, physical mannerisms, looking for anything that indicated deception or hidden agendas. Wells was good. Very good. His affect was consistent. Body language relaxed. Eye contact natural. Nothing overtly suggested lying or manipulation. But something was still off. Something Barry's enhanced perception caught in tiny details. Wells's eyes. They held depths that didn't match his friendly demeanor. Like someone who'd seen things that changed them fundamentally. Trauma maybe. Or knowledge that isolated him from normal human experience. His speech patterns occasionally included phrases that seemed slightly anachronistic. Modern idioms used in ways that were technically correct but contextually unusual. Like someone who'd learned contemporary language academically rather than organically, studying it from textbooks or recordings rather than living through the gradual evolution of colloquial expression. And twice during lunch, Wells's attention drifted. Just for seconds. His eyes went distant. Focus shifting to something internal. Then snapping back to the conversation without missing a beat, resuming exactly where they'd left off as though no interruption had occurred. None of it conclusive. All of it subtle. But Barry's enhanced mind noted every detail. Filed them away for later analysis. Cataloged each anomaly alongside contextual information and temporal markers for future cross-referencing. Lunch concluded at 1:43 p.m. Wells picked up the check despite Barry's offer to split it, insisting with a wave of his hand that it was his pleasure to treat. Think about my offer, Wells said as they walked out. No pressure. But I believe we could accomplish extraordinary things together. The kind of breakthroughs that change how we understand the fundamental nature of reality. They shook hands and parted ways. Barry waited until Wells's car had pulled away before returning to his own vehicle, maintaining the casual demeanor of someone simply heading home after a pleasant meal. He sat in the driver's seat and pulled out his phone. Gideon, analysis complete. Yes. Processing audio from lunch conversation. Analysis shows 93 instances of standard speech patterns. 11 instances of unusual phrasing. 7 micropauses inconsistent with natural conversation flow. 3 moments where vocal stress indicators spiked without corresponding emotional context. Additionally, breathing patterns showed irregularities during 4 separate exchanges, suggesting conscious effort to control physiological responses. Conclusion. Dr. Wells is concealing something. Unable to determine specifics from available data. But deception markers are present at statistically significant levels. Probability of active information suppression, 87% with current data set. Barry nodded slowly. His instincts had been correct. Wells was hiding something. Not necessarily being reverse flash, but something significant. Something that required conscious effort to conceal, suggesting practice and premeditation rather than simple omission. Continue background research, Barry said. Deep dive. I want everything you can find. Focus on the gaps in his timeline. Periods where his location or activities are unaccounted for. Cross-reference with any unusual energy signatures or anomalous events during those windows. Acknowledged. Expanded investigation initiated. Estimated completion time, 48 hours for preliminary findings, 7 to 10 days for comprehensive analysis. Barry started his car and drove home, mind processing everything. Wells had made a compelling offer. Partnership. Resources. Access. The opportunity to work with cutting-edge technology and brilliant minds on projects that could genuinely advance human knowledge. But accepting meant deeper entanglement with whatever secrets Wells was keeping. That created risk. Potential exposure if things went wrong. If Wells's hidden agenda conflicted with Barry's own goals, or worse, if his secrets involved the very catastrophe Barry was trying to prevent. On the other hand, staying at arm's length meant missing opportunities. Missing information. Being less prepared when the particle accelerator eventually exploded. Lacking the insider perspective that could prove crucial when everything went sideways and the timeline reached that critical juncture. The decision required more data. More observation. More analysis of who Harrison Wells truly was beneath the friendly scientist persona. Understanding his motivations, his capabilities, his true objectives beyond the public-facing mission of STAR Labs. Barry would continue the relationship. Accept consulting projects. Maintain regular contact. But he wouldn't commit to partnership until he understood what he was really getting into. Until he could assess whether Wells's secrets posed a threat or simply represented personal complexity irrelevant to Barry's larger concerns. Because he has learned one crucial lesson over the past months, in a world with time travelers and speedsters and multiversal threats, nothing was ever exactly what it seemed. Appearances could be weaponized, personas could be constructed, and even the most brilliant scientific minds could harbor agendas that contradicted their stated goals. And Harrison Wells, despite all appearances of normalcy, definitely had secrets. Deep ones, carefully guarded, protected by layers of misdirection and controlled presentation. Barry just needed to figure out what they were before making irreversible commitments. Before entangling himself so thoroughly in Wells's world that extraction became impossible without triggering consequences he couldn't predict or control. 3 days after the lunch with Harrison Wells, Barry sat in his office reviewing the Tesla purchase order. The document was 47 pages long. Legal language, technical specifications, delivery schedules, payment terms, everything meticulously detailed. But the bottom line was simple: $87 million for initial battery deliveries. Another $340 million committed over 18 months if performance metrics were maintained. $427 million total. From one customer. Barry signed the agreement electronically and sent it back. The first major commercial contract for his company. A company that hadn't existed 6 months ago. A company that would now generate revenue that put it in the unicorn category within a year. His phone rang. Forbes magazine. The interview Catherine Myers had scheduled. Barry answered. "This is Barry Allen." "Mr. Allen, Catherine Myers. Ready to start the interview. Go ahead." For the next 35 minutes, Barry answered questions about his background, his technology, and his vision for the future. He was careful, revealing enough to be interesting but not so much that competitors could reverse engineer his innovations. Catherine asked about his age. 23. That would be a major angle in the article. Young genius disrupting a massive industry. She asked about his education. Forensic science degree. Self-taught in engineering and materials science. Another angle. Unconventional path to success. She asked about his goals. Barry gave her the prepared answer about advancing human capability through technology, making energy storage so efficient that electric vehicles became superior to combustion engines in every way. Professional. Polished. Exactly what Forbes readers would want to hear. Last question, Catherine said. What drives you? Most people your age are still figuring out their careers. You're building a company worth hundreds of millions. What's the motivation? Barry paused. Considered the real answer. That he'd transmigrated from another world with meta-knowledge and enhanced intellect. That he was preparing for a particle accelerator explosion that would grant him superpowers. That his ultimate goal was becoming powerful enough to shape the future rather than be shaped by it. Obviously couldn't say any of that. I watched my parents die in a car accident when I was 8, Barry said instead. True, even if the emotional weight was diluted by his transmigration. That taught me life is fragile. Time is limited. If you're going to do something meaningful, you can't wait for the perfect moment. You have to create it. That's powerful, Catherine said quietly. I'm sorry for your loss. It was a long time ago, but it shaped who I am. The interview concluded. Catherine promised the article would run in 2 weeks. Barry hung up and immediately shifted mental gears. Forbes' exposure would accelerate everything. More customers. More investor interest despite not needing investors. More public profile. Which created security concerns. The more visible Barry became, the more vulnerable his secrets were. The thinking cap. The stolen DeVoe research. The careful timeline manipulation he'd been doing. Gideon, security assessment. If Forbes' article generates major media attention, what's our exposure risk? Analyzing. 3 seconds. Primary risks. Increased scrutiny of patent timeline raises questions about rapid development. Background checks by potential partners or competitors may uncover shell companies used for initial funding. Social connections to Joe and Iris West could create pressure to explain sudden wealth and career change. All manageable. Barry's patents were legitimate even if the development timeline was impossibly fast. The shell companies were properly structured with layers of legal separation, and his relationship with the Wests was easily explained as childhood connections. Mitigation strategies. Barry asked. Recommend preparing media-friendly narrative about autodidactic learning and intensive research periods. Establish professional distance from personal relationships to prevent perception of impropriety. Consider hiring PR consultant to manage public image proactively. Good recommendations. Barry made notes. He'd need to be more careful going forward. More deliberate about what he revealed and when. Barry's laptop chimed. Email from Harrison Wells. Subject, Star Labs partnership follow-up. Barry, I hope you've had time to consider my offer. No pressure, but I wanted to provide additional context that might help your decision. Star Labs is entering a critical phase. The particle accelerator construction begins next month. We're assembling the final team now. Having someone with your capabilities involved from the beginning would be invaluable. I'm also working on something I haven't discussed publicly yet. A project that combines theoretical physics with practical applications. Something that could change our understanding of reality itself. I'd like to share more, but only with people who are committed to being part of what we're building. If you're interested, let's schedule another meeting. This time at Star Labs. I'll show you what we're really working toward. Best. Harrison. Barry read the email 3 times. Wells was escalating, offering access to secret projects, trying to create urgency around the partnership decision. The smart play was declining, maintaining distance, avoiding entanglement with whatever Wells was hiding. But Barry's enhanced curiosity wouldn't let it go. What project was Wells working on? What could change understanding of reality itself? Dimensional theory? Time travel? Something else entirely? The only way to know was accepting the invitation. Barry typed a response, "I'm interested. When works for you?" The reply came within 2 minutes, "Tomorrow, 3 p.m. I'll clear my schedule." Barry confirmed and closed his laptop. Tomorrow he'd see what Harrison Wells was really building, what secrets Star Labs held beyond the particle accelerator, and maybe he'd finally get enough data to determine whether Wells was exactly what he appeared to be or something far more complicated. Thursday evening arrived with the underground fight Barry had scheduled weeks ago. The warehouse was packed. More spectators than usual. Word had spread about Barry's winning streak. People wanted to see the young fighter who dominated every opponent. Barry stood in the makeshift locker area, wrapping his hands. His body was in peak condition. Months of optimized training visible in every muscle. His mind was sharp even without the thinking cap. Baseline cognitive enhancement made fight analysis trivial. His opponent tonight was different from previous matches. Older, scarred, professional fighter who'd fallen on hard times and needed money. Someone actually dangerous. Marcus, Barry's trainer, had warned him. "This guy's fought in real promotions. He's got technique and experience. Don't underestimate him." Barry nodded but felt no concern. His enhanced mind had watched footage of the opponent's previous fights, identified weaknesses, calculated optimal strategies. The fight would last less than 2 minutes. At 9:47 p.m., Barry walked into the cage. The crowd noise was deafening. Bets being placed. Money changing hands. Violence as entertainment. His opponent entered from the opposite side. Bigger than Barry. Heavier. Older. Face showing the accumulated damage of a fighting career. They touched gloves. The referee stepped back. The fight began. Barry let his opponent come forward. Watched his footwork. His stance. The way he distributed weight. Everything confirmed what video analysis had shown. Orthodox boxer. Heavy right hand. Tendency to drop his lead hand after jab combinations. 15 seconds of observation. That's all Barry needed. Then he moved. Whip crack. Barry's jab snapped out 3 times in rapid succession, each one landing clean on his opponent's face. The bigger man's head rocked back. Blood sprayed from his nose. He tried to clinch. Barry slipped sideways, threw a liver shot that folded his opponent slightly. Thud. Follow-up right hand to the temple. His opponent stumbled. Balance compromised. Barry's enhanced mind calculated the finish sequence. Left hook to solar plexus. Right uppercut when he drops his guard. Spinning back fist as he reels backward. He executed perfectly. Crack. 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 3 strikes in under 2 seconds. His opponent collapsed, unconscious before hitting the mat. The crowd erupted. Barry stood over the fallen fighter, breathing steadily, not winded, not hurt, completely in control. The referee checked the unconscious man and waved off the fight. Technical knockout. 93 seconds total fight time. Barry collected his winnings. $3,000. Decent money but insignificant compared to his business revenue. He fought for different reasons now. Testing himself. Maintaining edge. Confirming that his physical development matched his intellectual advancement. As he left the warehouse, someone called his name. Barry Allen. Barry turned. A woman stood in the shadows. Late 30s. Professional clothes that seemed out of place in this environment. Sharp eyes that assessed him carefully. "Do I know you?" Barry asked. "No, but I know you." She stepped into better light. "Amanda Waller. I work for a government organization that monitors individuals with unusual capabilities." Barry's enhanced mind immediately flagged danger. Amanda Waller. In the comics and shows, she ran Argus and Task Force X. Ruthless. Intelligent. Dangerous when she decided someone was a threat or an asset. "I don't have unusual capabilities," Barry said calmly. "Just training and dedication. You're a 23-year-old who quit a forensic science job 6 months ago. Now you run a company worth hundreds of millions. You've developed battery technology that shouldn't exist yet. And you just knocked out a professional fighter in under 90 seconds. Waller's expression didn't change. "That's not normal dedication. That's something else." Barry maintained perfect composure despite the threat assessment running in his mind. Waller had been watching him, gathering information, which meant she considered him either useful or dangerous. "What do you want?" Barry asked. "Information. About how you developed your technology so quickly. About who you're working with. About what else you're capable of. And if I decline to provide that information, then I keep watching. Keep gathering data. Keep building a file." Waller stepped closer. "I don't make threats, Mr. Allen. I make observations. And I observe that you're hiding something significant. Eventually, I'll figure out what." She handed him a business card. Plain white. Just a phone number. No name or organization. "When you're ready to talk, call that number. Or don't. Either way, I'll be watching." Waller turned and walked away, disappeared into the crowd of departing spectators. Barry stood alone, processing the encounter. This was a complication he hadn't anticipated. Government surveillance. Official interest in his activities. How much did Waller actually know? How long had she been watching? What resources did she have access to? Questions without immediate answers, but requiring immediate response planning. Barry got in his car and drove home quickly. Once inside his apartment, he activated his secured laptop. Gideon, priority research. Amanda Waller, government connections, current organizational affiliations, surveillance capabilities, Searching. 15 seconds. Amanda Waller, Director of Argus, Advanced Research Group uniting superhumans. Black Ops Division of U.S. Intelligence Community. Extensive surveillance capabilities including satellite access, communications monitoring, and field operatives. Known for recruiting or neutralizing individuals with metahuman potential. Exactly what Barry had feared. Waller ran an organization specifically designed to handle people like him. People with abilities beyond normal human range. Assessment of current threat level. Moderate to high. Director Waller's approach suggests active investigation but no immediate action planned. However, continued observation means eventual discovery of thinking cap, devo research acquisition, and other sensitive activities. Probability of forced recruitment or detention, 34% within 6 months if current trajectory continues. Not acceptable. Barry needed to eliminate Waller's interest or at least redirect it. But how? His enhanced mind calculated options. He could cooperate. Provide limited information that satisfied her curiosity without revealing critical secrets. That might reduce her interest level. Or he could demonstrate he wasn't a threat. Show that his capabilities served beneficial purposes. That recruiting him was unnecessary because he was already working toward positive goals. Or he could make himself too valuable to touch. Build such significant public profile and commercial success that overt government action would create political backlash. The third option seemed most viable. Forbes article would help. Additional media exposure. Becoming a visible tech leader whose harassment would generate questions. Gideon, prepare comprehensive PR strategy. I want to raise my public profile significantly over the next 3 months. Speaking engagements. Media interviews. Industry events. Make me too visible for covert action. Strategy development initiated. Preliminary recommendations will be ready in 4 hours. Good. Barry would flood the zone. Become so publicly prominent that Waller couldn't move against him without attracting attention. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it bought time. And time was what Barry needed to complete his preparations before the particle accelerator explosion. He had less than 3 years left. Every month mattered. Every distraction was costly. Amanda Waller was now another variable to manage. Another threat to navigate around. Another piece of the complex game Barry was playing. But he'd handled every challenge so far. This would be no different. Read more chapters, days ahead of web novel updates, on Patreon Marvelstark. Comment. 7 comment. Vote. Chapter 41, Suspicious Dimensional Traveler. Barry powered down his laptop and checked the time. 11:34 p.m. Tomorrow was the Star Labs meeting. Wells would reveal something important. Barry would assess whether deeper involvement made sense. Tonight though, he needed rest. Even enhanced physiology had limits. Barry went to bed, mind still processing Waller's appearance. The implications. The countermeasures. Sleep came slowly. When it finally did, his dreams were filled with calculations and contingencies. Plans layering on plans. Futures branching into infinite possibilities. And through it all, one constant, Barry Allen would be ready for whatever came next. Because being unprepared was the only truly unacceptable outcome. Friday afternoon, Barry arrived at Star Labs at 2:53 p.m. The facility looked different in daylight. More impressive. The buildings gleamed in the sun. Construction equipment surrounded the particle accelerator site. The scale of what Wells was building became obvious. Billions of dollars. Years of work. All focused on one goal, advancing human understanding of fundamental physics. Or so the official narrative claimed. Caitlin met Barry at security. Dr. Wells is expecting you. Conference room B. Not his private lab, Barry asked as they walked through corridors. No, he wants to show you the particle accelerator design problem first. It's been driving everyone crazy for months. Caitlin's expression showed frustration. We've had to extend the completion timeline by 3 years because of it. They entered a large conference room. Whiteboards covered every wall, filled with equations and diagrams. Harrison Wells stood at the center, studying a holographic projection of the particle accelerator design. Cisco Ramon sat at a computer terminal, looking exhausted. Tell me you brought coffee, he said when he saw them. Barry, thank you for coming. Wells gestured to the hologram. Let me show you what's been keeping us awake at night. The holographic display showed the complete particle accelerator structure. A ring 3.2 kilometers in circumference. Magnetic containment systems. Energy distribution networks. All of it incredibly complex. Wells pointed to a section highlighted in red. The problem is here. Energy distribution during peak acceleration. The magnetic fields create interference patterns that destabilize the particle beam. We've run 10,000 simulations. Every solution creates new problems. Barry studied the hologram, his enhanced mind absorbing every detail. The design was brilliant but flawed. Wells and his team had approached the problem correctly but missed a fundamental relationship between the field geometries and temporal energy dispersion. Can I see the full simulation data? Barry asked. Cisco brought it up on multiple screens. Thousands of pages of calculations. Energy flow models. Magnetic field interactions. Particle trajectory predictions. Barry's enhanced intellect processed it all in 47 seconds. Saw the pattern immediately. The solution was elegant but required reimagining the entire energy distribution architecture. You're using a centralized distribution model, Barry said. That's why the interference patterns are insurmountable. The energy concentrations create resonance cascades. We know, Cisco said tiredly, but distributed models require too many synchronization points. The timing margins are impossible. Not if you use adaptive frequency modulation. Barry walked to a whiteboard and started writing equations. His hand moved rapidly. Instead of fixed distribution frequencies, you create a feedback system that adjusts in real time based on field measurements. Wells stepped closer, watching intently. The computational requirements would be massive, manageable with the right algorithmic architecture. Barry continued writing. Mathematical frameworks for adaptive systems. Control theory applications. Quantum field corrections. I've been developing heuristic optimization protocols. Self-correcting algorithms that can handle the computational load without requiring traditional AI frameworks. Heuristic protocols. Caitlin asked, interested. Like machine learning but more specialized. Similar concept but more targeted. The algorithms adapt based on real-time data inputs but don't require neural network training. Just pure mathematical optimization with feedback loops. Barry worked for 23 minutes straight, filling whiteboards with solutions. The equations flowed from his enhanced mind effortlessly. He wasn't just solving the immediate problem. He was redesigning the entire energy distribution architecture to be fundamentally more stable. When he finished, 3 whiteboards were covered in dense mathematical notation. Wells stood silently, reading through everything. His expression shifted from skepticism to shock to something like awe. His eyes narrowed slightly, almost imperceptibly, studying Barry with new intensity. Nobody solves problems this fast, Wells thought. Not even the brightest minds I've encountered. This level of pattern recognition, this intuitive grasp of complex systems, it's beyond prodigy level. For a brief moment, suspicion flickered through Wells's mind. Could Barry be something more than he appeared? Someone with knowledge from elsewhere? Another traveler perhaps? But no, that was unlikely. Wells had been watching for signs of other dimensional travelers since arriving on this Earth. Barry showed none of the tells. His background checked out. His timeline was consistent. He was just, extraordinarily intelligent. Impossibly intelligent. Wells filed the observation away. Something to monitor, but not act on. Not yet. This works, Wells said quietly, his tone carefully controlled. My God, this actually works. Cisco was typing furiously, running preliminary simulations based on Barry's equations. He's right. The resonance cascades disappear completely. And look at this. He pointed to his screen. The efficiency increases by 34%. We could run the accelerator at higher power levels than originally designed. Caitlin was checking the mathematics. The adaptive modulation is brilliant. It solves 6 other problems we've been struggling with. Wells turned to Barry, his expression friendly but his eyes still sharp. Still assessing. Do you understand what you've just done? This problem has delayed our timeline by 3 years. You solved it in 20 minutes. 23 minutes, Barry corrected. And it's solvable because you'd already done the foundational work. I just saw the pattern you'd missed. How long would implementation take? Wells asked. Barry's enhanced mind calculated. 2 weeks to code the optimization protocols. Another week to reprogram the magnetic controllers. 3 weeks total until you can test the new configuration. 3 weeks. Wells laughed. Actual laughter. But his eyes remained watchful. We've been stuck on this for 8 months. You're telling me we can fix it in 3 weeks? If you give me access to your systems and time to implement the protocols, yes. Wells extended his hand. You just became part of this team, Barry. Full partnership. Whatever you need. Barry shook his hand, feeling the shift in dynamics. He'd just proven his value completely. Demonstrated intellect that Wells couldn't ignore or dismiss. But he'd also attracted Wells's suspicion. Barry could see it in the slight tightness around the scientist's eyes. The way Wells was studying him just a fraction too carefully. He suspects something, Barry thought. Not everything, but enough to be watching me more closely now. Good to know. Barry would need to be more careful going forward. More deliberate about what he revealed and how quickly. There's something I need to show you, Wells said. Something I don't share with most people. But after what you just did, I think you've earned it. He led Barry out of the conference room. Caitlin and Cisco stayed behind, already working on implementation plans. Wells and Barry walked through corridors to an unmarked door. What I'm about to show you stays confidential, Wells said. The particle accelerator isn't just for physics research. It's part of something bigger. They descended to a sublevel Barry hadn't known existed. The architecture changed. Older. More secure. At the bottom, another door. Wells entered a code and scanned his handprint. The lock disengaged. Welcome to my private lab, Wells said. Barry entered. The lab was massive. Equipment he didn't fully recognize lined the walls. Computer systems running complex simulations. And in the center, a cylindrical chamber roughly 10 feet tall. What is it? Barry asked, already suspecting the answer. An experiment in dimensional physics, Wells said carefully. I've been researching parallel worlds. Alternate realities. The particle accelerator will provide the energy necessary to test my theories. Barry's enhanced mind processed the implications. Wells was working on interdimensional technology. That suggested knowledge or interest that went beyond normal physics research. Why? Barry asked simply. Wells was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried weight. Because I believe there are answers in other dimensions. Solutions to problems we face here. Maybe even warnings about threats we haven't encountered yet. It wasn't the full truth. Barry could tell. Wells was holding something back. But pushing now would create resistance. That's ambitious, Barry said instead. How can I help? Right now, solve the particle accelerator problem. Get us operational faster. Wells smiled, but his eyes remained watchful. After that, we'll see what else you're capable of. Barry nodded. He'd gotten what he needed. Integration with Star Labs. Direct involvement with the particle accelerator. Positioning for when it eventually exploded. And he'd learned something valuable. Wells was suspicious. Not certain of anything. But watching. Evaluating. Barry would need to be careful. Very careful. One wrong move and Wells might dig deeper. Might discover things Barry couldn't afford revealed. Whatever secrets Harrison Wells held, Barry would uncover them. His enhanced intellect would find the patterns. Connect the dots. Reveal the truth. But that would come later. When the particle accelerator was close to completion. When Wells's guard was down. For now, Barry had work to do. And a suspicious scientist to carefully manage. He left Star Labs that evening as an official team member. Full access. Partnership agreement. Everything he needed to monitor the project from the inside. But also with the knowledge that Harrison Wells was watching him just as carefully as Barry was watching Wells. The game had become more complex. More dangerous. And Barry Allen would need every advantage to stay ahead. Over the next 3 weeks, Barry transformed Star Labs' particle accelerator timeline. He coded the heuristic optimization protocols himself. Working late nights in his apartment. Building algorithmic systems that could handle real-time adaptive calculations without requiring true artificial intelligence frameworks. The code was elegant. Efficient. Far more sophisticated than anything commercially available. But explainable as brilliant programming rather than AI integration. Barry was careful during implementation. He worked methodically. Asked questions that a genius would ask but not questions that would reveal impossible knowledge. He made mistakes occasionally. Small ones. The kind a human would make even when brilliant. Wells watched it all. Barry could feel the scrutiny. But he gave Wells nothing concrete to grasp. Just exceptional intelligence applied with impressive focus. The adaptive energy distribution system was implemented exactly as Barry had designed. Testing showed it worked flawlessly. The resonance problems disappeared. Energy efficiency increased dramatically. But Barry didn't stop there. His enhanced mind saw other optimization opportunities throughout the accelerator design. Small improvements that compounded into major advantages. He redesigned the magnetic containment protocols. Improved the cooling systems. Streamlined the control interfaces. Each change made the accelerator better. Faster. More powerful. Wells watched it all with growing amazement mixed with lingering suspicion. You're not just solving problems, Wells said during one late-night work session. His tone was admiring but his eyes remained sharp. You're revolutionizing the entire design. Just optimization, Barry said, keeping his tone modest even as his mind operated at superhuman levels. Seeing patterns others miss. You see a lot of patterns, Wells observed. Not quite an accusation. More like filing away data for future analysis. Barry met his eyes calmly. I've always been good at pattern recognition. It's why I was good at forensic work. Wells nodded slowly, accepting the explanation but not entirely convinced. He changed the subject. How much longer until full implementation? Another week. Maybe 10 days. By the end of week 3, Cisco ran comprehensive timeline projections. Unbelievable, Cisco said, staring at his screen. Original completion date was December 2016. With Barry's optimizations, we're looking at March 2015. Wait, Caitlin said. March 2015? That's less than 14 months from now. Wells pulled up the projections himself. Verified the calculations. His expression showed shock. And beneath that, something else. Calculation. Assessment. Barry, you've shortened our timeline by 80%. Nearly 2 full years ahead of schedule. The optimizations cascade, Barry explained. Each improvement makes subsequent work easier. The effect compounds. Wells studied him for a long moment. His eyes narrowed fractionally. That same assessing look from weeks ago but more pronounced now. This isn't normal, Wells thought. Even accounting for genius-level intellect, this is beyond standard human capability. But what is he? Enhanced? Augmented? Or just naturally exceptional to an unprecedented degree? The suspicion was stronger now, but still not certainty. Wells had no concrete evidence. No proof of anything beyond exceptional intelligence. And maybe that's all it was. Maybe Barry Allen was simply the most brilliant mind Wells had encountered on Earth-1. Unlikely, but possible. Wells decided to continue watching. Continue evaluating. But not confront. Not yet. Better to keep Barry close. Keep him integrated with Star Labs where Wells could observe him. If Barry was something more than he appeared, Wells would eventually discover it. And if he wasn't, then Wells had found an invaluable partner for his work. Either way, keeping Barry close was the smart play. Remarkable work, Wells said finally. His tone was warm but his eyes remained guarded. You've made the impossible possible. Happy to help, Barry said. This technology will change the world. It will, Wells agreed. His expression shifted. Became more open. But Barry could still sense the calculation beneath. Thank you, Barry. Truly. They parted ways that evening. Both men thinking about each other. Both suspicious. Both calculating next moves. Barry left Star Labs knowing Wells was watching him more carefully now. That meant being more cautious, more deliberate, playing the role of exceptional human rather than revealing any hint of his true capabilities. The particle accelerator would be operational by March 2015, which meant Barry had 14 months to complete his chamber, perfect his 7-ability integration system, position himself for the explosion, and manage a suspicious Harrison Wells who clearly suspected something but didn't know what. The game had become more delicate, more dangerous, and Barry Allen would need to be perfect in his deception, because one slip, one revelation too early, and everything could unravel. But Barry had his enhanced intellect, his meta-knowledge, his careful planning. He would navigate this, just like he'd navigated everything else. Harrison Wells had secrets, and eventually, Barry would uncover them all. But for now, both men would watch each other. Both would calculate. Both would wait for the other to make a mistake. And when the particle accelerator finally exploded, all secrets would be revealed. Ready or not. The Forbes article dropped on a Tuesday morning. Barry's phone started buzzing at 6:23 a.m. Notifications, emails, messages, all flooding in simultaneously. He grabbed the phone and pulled up the article, The 23-Year-Old Genius Disrupting Energy Storage, by Catherine Myers. The photo they'd used showed Barry in his office, standing beside battery prototypes. Professional, polished, the kind of image that said serious innovator rather than kid who got lucky. Barry read through the article quickly. Catherine had done excellent work. She'd captured his background, his technology, his vision, made him sound brilliant but not arrogant, ambitious but grounded. The quotes were perfect. His explanation of wanting to make electric vehicles superior to combustion engines. His mention of his parents' death shaping his drive to do meaningful work. His humble acknowledgement that the technology still had challenges to overcome. It was exactly the kind of publicity Barry needed. Credible, impressive, human. His phone rang. Unknown number. Barry Allen. Mr. Allen, this is Michael Lane from General Motors. I just read the Forbes piece. We'd like to discuss potential partnership opportunities. I'm happy to talk. Send me an overview of what you're thinking and we can schedule a meeting. Will do. Expect it within an hour. Barry hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Another company. Another partnership inquiry. By 8 a.m., he'd received 17 calls, 43 emails, and 6 text messages. All of them asking about battery contracts, licensing agreements, or investment opportunities. His laptop chimed. Gideon's voice came through the speakers. Barry, media monitoring shows the Forbes article has been shared over 12,000 times in the past 90 minutes. Trending on multiple platforms. Expect significant attention today. Compile all serious business inquiries. Filter out noise. I want a prioritized list by noon. Acknowledged. Also, 3 major news networks have requested interviews. CNN, Bloomberg, and CNBC. Barry considered. More media exposure meant more protection from Waller. Made him too visible for quiet government action. But it also meant more scrutiny of his background and timeline. Accept Bloomberg, Barry said. Tell them I'm available next week. Decline the others for now. Confirmed. Barry got ready for the day. Showered. Changed into professional clothes. His apartment felt smaller than usual. The equipment and prototypes scattered everywhere seemed inadequate for what he was building. He needed real facilities. Proper lab space. Manufacturing capabilities. A physical presence that matched his company's valuation. Something to add to the list. Barry grabbed coffee and sat down at his laptop. Checked his email properly. The inquiries were pouring in. GM Nissan. Volkswagen. LG Panasonic. Sony. Every major electronics and automotive manufacturer wanted to talk. His phone rang again. This time a familiar number. Joe West. Hey Joe. Barry. Saw the Forbes article. Kid, what the hell is going on? Barry smiled despite himself. Building a company. Making batteries. Making batteries. Joe's tone was flat. The article says you're worth over $500 million. On paper. Not actual money. On paper is still money, Barry. When were you going to mention you'd become a tech mogul? I'm not a mogul. Just someone with good technology at the right time. Joe was quiet for a moment. Your parents would be proud. You know that, right? The words hit harder than Barry expected. Because Joe meant them. Genuinely believed Henry and Nora Allen would be proud of what their son had accomplished. Thanks, Joe. That means a lot. Iris wants to talk to you too. She's excited. And maybe a little annoyed you didn't tell her how big this was getting. I'll call her later today. You better. And Barry, don't forget where you came from. Success is great, but people matter more. They hung up. Barry sat quietly for a moment, processing. Joe was right. He'd been so focused on building wealth and preparing for the particle accelerator that he'd neglected the human connections. Not sustainable. He needed to balance better. His laptop chimed. Email from Harrison Wells. Subject, congratulations. Barry. Saw the Forbes article. Impressive work. You're becoming quite the public figure. I wanted to mention something that might interest you. We're hosting a tech symposium at Star Labs next month. Bringing together the brightest minds in Central City to discuss future innovations. Would you be willing to present your battery technology? It would be good exposure for both you and Star Labs. Plus an opportunity to connect with other researchers. Let me know. Best. Harrison. Barry read it twice. Wells was being friendly, supportive even, but underneath that was calculation. Wells wanted Barry more visible at Star Labs, more integrated with the team, more observable. The suspicion was still there. Wells was watching, assessing, trying to figure out what made Barry so exceptional. Barry typed a response, "I'd be happy to present. Send me the details and I'll clear my schedule." Professional, cooperative, giving Wells what he wanted while maintaining his own plans. Another email arrived. This one from a law firm. Mr. Allen. Our firm specializes in technology law and corporate structuring. Given your recent media exposure and company growth, we believe you may benefit from dedicated legal counsel. We'd like to schedule a consultation to discuss tax optimization, IP protection, and regulatory compliance strategies. Please contact us at your convenience. Barry forwarded it to Gideon. Vet this firm. If they're legitimate and qualified, schedule a meeting. Processing. Initial background check shows solid reputation. No red flags. Scheduling for Thursday afternoon. Good. Barry needed proper legal infrastructure. His shell companies and basic setup had worked for early stages, but now he was handling hundreds of millions in contracts. That required professional support. His phone buzzed. Text from Iris. "Forbes? Why didn't you tell me? Call me now." Barry smiled and dialed her number. She answered immediately. "Barry Allen. $500 million and you didn't think to mention it. It's not liquid. Just company valuation. Still, that's insane. I knew you were working on something but I didn't know it was this big. It grew faster than I expected." Iris laughed. "You're being modest. The article makes you sound like the next Elon Musk. I'm not that ambitious." "Liar. You're exactly that ambitious." Her tone softened. "I'm proud of you, Barry. Really. This is incredible. Thanks. Want to celebrate? Dinner this weekend?" "Absolutely. But somewhere fancy. You can afford it now, Mr. 500 million. They talked for another 10 minutes. Light conversation. Iris was genuinely happy for him. No jealousy. No resentment. Just authentic excitement. Barry appreciated that. In a life increasingly complicated by secrets and calculations, Iris remained uncomplicated. Real. Grounded. When he hung up, Barry returned to work. Gideon had compiled the business inquiry list. 47 serious contacts. All wanting contracts or partnerships. Barry worked through them methodically, responding to the most promising, delegating others to future consideration. His enhanced intellect made the prioritization trivial. By noon, he'd responded to 23 inquiries and scheduled 12 meetings over the next 2 weeks. His phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed Star Labs. "Barry Allen. Barry, it's Caitlin." Her voice sounded professional but Barry detected underlying excitement. "Have you seen the news? The Forbes article?" "Yeah. Everyone here is talking about it. Cisco keeps showing people the part where you're quoted. He's very excited to be working with someone famous." Barry laughed. "I'm not famous. Just got some press. You're trending on 3 social media platforms. That's pretty famous." Caitlin paused. "Dr. Wells wanted me to make sure you got his email about the symposium. He's hoping you'll say yes." I already replied. "I'm presenting?" "Good. That's good." Another pause. "Barry, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure. How do you handle it? The attention, the pressure, everything moving so fast." Interesting question. Caitlin was brilliant but Barry suspected she'd never experienced this kind of spotlight. Her research was important but not publicly visible. "I focus on the work," Barry said. "The attention is noise. What matters is whether the technology actually helps people." "That's a good answer." Caitlin sounded thoughtful. "I'll let you get back to your day. Congratulations again." They hung up. Barry noted the conversation in his mental file on Caitlin. She was curious about him, interested beyond just professional collaboration. That could develop into something later if he navigated carefully. Another piece on the board. Another relationship to manage. Barry spent the afternoon handling business calls and emails. The volume was overwhelming even with Gideon's help. Every major player in energy storage wanted a piece of his technology. By 6 p.m., Barry had closed 3 more contracts. Combined value, $287 million over 2 years. His company valuation was climbing rapidly. The Forbes article had accelerated everything. Within weeks, he'd likely cross the billion-dollar threshold. Barry closed his laptop and sat back, processing the day. Everything was happening faster than even his optimized projections predicted. The media exposure was working. Companies were desperate for his technology. Money was flooding in, but with growth came complications. Legal issues, tax implications, regulatory oversight. All of it requiring careful navigation. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Impressive article, Mr. Allen. You're becoming quite visible. That's smart. Makes it harder for people like me to act quietly. Well played. A.W. Amanda Waller." Acknowledging Barry's strategy. Confirming what he'd suspected. The publicity was protecting him from Argus intervention. For now, Barry didn't respond. Just filed the message away as evidence that his approach was working. He stood and walked to his window. Looked out at Central City. The sun was setting. Office buildings lit up against the darkening sky. Millions of people going about their lives. None of them knowing what was coming in 14 months. The particle accelerator would explode. Metahumans would emerge. The world would change forever. And Barry Allen would be at the center of it. Not by accident. By design. By preparation so thorough that destiny became a variable he controlled. His phone rang one more time. Wells again. Barry, sorry to call so late. Quick question about the particle accelerator energy distribution protocols. Are you available tomorrow to review some refinements? Morning or afternoon? Morning works better. 9 a.m. I'll be there. Barry hung up and made a mental note. Wells was keeping him close. Integrated. Observable. The scientist's suspicion hadn't faded. If anything, the Forbes article had probably intensified it. How does a 23-year-old develop revolutionary battery technology in months? Wells would be asking. Where did the knowledge come from? What's the real explanation? Questions Barry couldn't answer truthfully, which meant maintaining the facade perfectly. No slips. No revelations. Just exceptional intelligence applied with impressive dedication. Sustainable for now, but increasingly difficult as his accomplishments piled up. Barry would need to be more careful, more deliberate. The spotlight was protection but also exposure. Every move mattered now, every word, every demonstration of capability, because the wrong revelation at the wrong time could unravel everything. Across town, in a secure Argus facility, Amanda Waller sat in her office, reading the Forbes article for the third time. Her deputy, Agent Roberts, stood waiting for her assessment. He's playing this perfectly, Waller said finally. The media exposure protects him from covert action, makes him too visible to disappear quietly. Should we back off? Roberts asked. No, but we adjust approach. Waller set down the article. Barry Allen is either enhanced, augmented, or has access to knowledge he shouldn't possess. Normal humans don't develop this kind of technology this quickly. What's the next move? Deep background investigation. Financial forensics. Find the shell companies. Trace the money. Identify any irregularities in his timeline. Waller leaned back in her chair. And increase surveillance. I want to know everywhere he goes. Everyone he talks to. Everything he's building. That's extensive resources for one target. This isn't just one target. This is someone who might become a metahuman threat or a significant asset. Waller's expression hardened. Either way, I need to know what he's capable of before he becomes unmanageable. Roberts nodded. I'll coordinate with field teams. When he left, Waller pulled up Barry's file on her computer. Photos. Background information. Financial records. Employment history. All of it looked normal on the surface. But Waller had learned to see beneath surfaces. And beneath Barry Allen's exceptional but human exterior, something else was happening. Something that didn't fit standard patterns. She'd figure it out eventually. She always did at Star Labs, in Harrison Wells's private office. Wells sat alone, staring at the Forbes article on his tablet. The office was dark except for the pale blue glow of the screen. He hadn't moved in nearly an hour. The photo showed Barry looking confident, professional, brilliant. The kind of photograph that made careers. The kind that ended rivalries before they began. But Wells saw something else. Something in Barry's eyes. A depth that shouldn't exist in someone so young. Knowledge that went beyond normal experience. Beyond ambition. Beyond even talent. Something almost ancient, buried just beneath the surface of that easy, unguarded smile. Who are you really, Barry Allen? Wells thought. He'd investigated Barry's background thoroughly, methodically, with the same precision he applied to every variable that entered his orbit. Everything checked out. Childhood tragedy. Raised by Joe West. College degree in forensic science. 6 months at CCPD before quitting to pursue independent research. Clean. Ordinary. Unremarkable on paper. All consistent. All believable. Except the results didn't match the timeline. Revolutionary battery technology developed in months, not years. Particle accelerator problems solved in minutes that had stumped Wells's own engineers for weeks. Optimizations that required years of accumulated expertise produced almost instantly, as if the answers were already known before the questions were properly formed. None of it fit normal genius patterns. None of it fit any pattern Wells recognized. Wells had known geniuses. Real prodigies. People who operated on different levels than ordinary humans, who saw connections others missed, who arrived at solutions by routes no one else would think to travel. He had studied them, befriended a few, outmaneuvered most. Barry was beyond even that. Operating on a level Wells had only seen in. He stopped that thought. Pushed it away. Firmly. Unlikely, Wells told himself. Nearly impossible. But not completely impossible. And Harrison Wells had long since learned never to discard the improbable simply because it was uncomfortable. Wells pulled up another window on his tablet. His private research files. Information he'd gathered quietly, carefully, over years about dimensional travelers. About people from other Earths who had slipped through the cracks between worlds. About the signs they exhibited when they thought no one was paying close enough attention. Anachronistic knowledge. Impossible capabilities. Awareness of things they shouldn't know, events not yet happened, technologies not yet invented, names of people they had never formally met. Barry didn't show the obvious signs. There was no stumbling over dates, no visible disorientation, no careless slips in casual conversation. But subtle patterns existed beneath the surface. Tiny inconsistencies that could be explained individually: fatigue, distraction, the quirks of an unusual mind, but that formed a larger and more troubling picture when examined collectively. Wells needed more data, more observation, More time with Barry in controlled situations where unusual knowledge might slip through the cracks, unguarded, unfiltered. Where instinct would override caution. The symposium would help. Watching Barry present publicly, unscripted, in front of an audience that would push and probe. Seeing how he handled unexpected questions from people who had nothing to lose by being difficult. Looking for tells the half-second pause before an answer, the precise certainty where uncertainty should exist. And the continued work on the particle accelerator provided daily opportunities that no symposium could replicate. Watching Barry solve problems in real time. Noting his methods. The direction of his thinking. Whether he worked toward answers or merely confirmed what he already knew. Identifying whether he was simply brilliant, or something far more complicated than brilliant. Wells closed the files and stood. Walked to his window. Looked out at the construction site where the particle accelerator was taking shape against the night sky, steel and concrete and ambition rising floor by floor, week by week. March 2015. 14 months away. Everything needed to be ready by then. Every variable accounted for. Every contingency planned. His dimensional bridge. His evacuation protocols. His plans to save Earth 2 from what was coming, the catastrophe only he knew was already in motion, already irreversible, already counting down. And now Barry Allen was part of those plans. Not by accident. Integrated. Essential. Too valuable to sideline, too central to the work to lose at this stage. But also potentially dangerous if Wells's suspicions proved correct. A wild variable in a system that could tolerate no unexpected deviations. Who are you, Barry Allen? Wells thought again, his breath fogging faintly against the cold glass. And what do you really want? No answers came. Just questions multiplying in the silence. Suspicions deepening, layering over one another like sediment, slow and relentless and heavy. Wells would watch. Would gather evidence piece by careful piece. Would eventually discover the truth, as he always did, as he had always done, not by rushing, but by being patient where impatient men made mistakes. Because Harrison Wells hadn't survived this long by ignoring his instincts. And his instincts screamed that Barry Allen was hiding something enormous.